Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became a hero without a quirk part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. So let's start the video. Prologue of the Warden. It was at age 4 that 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗏 found that the words all men are created equal was a complete lie. Some are stronger, some are faster, some smarter, some had more charisma. Even in the pre-Quirk era, it was clear that people were different in both abilities and level of skill. It became even clearer in the era of Quirk. Some could topple buildings, some could wield the elements, some could fly, some could outpace the fastest vehicles, and there are those that could never achieve that level of power. Those with quirks that are lesser in strength, those that only have quirks that change their appearance slightly, those whose quirks cripple them, those who just don't have a quirk at all. 𝗧𝗑 was in the second category, the very bottom of the power structure, quirkless, and because of that, he was told countless times that he would never reach his dream to be a hero. That would be lucky to be hired at a third-rate restaurant. Year after year after year, it was constantly pressed into his head, beaten into him even, that he was useless in the eyes of society. So, how did a quirkless, bullied, outcast of a power-filled world grew to become both a revered hero and a loving father of powerful orphans? 𝗧𝗵𝗿 didn't know how long he'd been standing up on this rooftop, just staring. It could have been hours, could have been minutes, seconds even, but the thought of time didn't matter to him. Not with what he's been just told in his mind. No, I don't think you can be a hero without a quirk. Honestly, should he really be surprised? Ever since he was diagnosed as quirkless, everyone has told him that being a hero was a pipe dream. His classmates, his teachers, 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐵, his mother, even. Each and every person he came to know has told him the exact same thing, that it was impossible to become a hero without a quirk. Why should he expect the #1 hero, 𝐼𝐴 to be different? What made him even hope that he would be the exception to everyone else? You knew it was a pipe dream, 𝗧𝗑, the boy thought to himself. Deep down, you knew that it wasn't possible, that no one would truly believe in you. I just kept running from reality. But then, what could he do? Should he just be a police officer like 𝐼𝐴? Take up less dangerous roles that'll still help others? It would be something, at least. But would a quirkless nobody be accepted into these fields? Would a useless Deku be accepted into any field? Quirkless people, after all, are less likely to be hired versus those with a quirk, especially if that quirk is useful for that field. What are his chances if the world already deemed him as useless? Is he just setting himself up for disappointment if he attempts to become an officer, or a doctor, or anything that involves saving others? Is it worth it to even try? Or should he just? For a moment, 𝗧𝗑 turned his eyes downward towards the street, Bakugo's last advice to him flashing in his mind. But that moment quickly passed, and the quirkless boy stepped away from the edge of the roof. A shaky breath left his lips, realizing where his thoughts were going. He needed to get out of here, get away from the roof, find somewhere else to think. Since he didn't feel like going home at the moment, 𝗧𝗑 just wandered around the city. He walked mindlessly, not really paying attention to where he was going or what time it was, just moved around like an emotionless robot. Eventually, he found himself stopping somewhere, and that somewhere was Dagobah Beach. 𝗧𝗑 muttered in realization. Looking around the trash-filled beach, his eyes gloomily went back downward. Figures that I'm here, of all places. This was once a beautiful beach that everyone would go to. However, trash kept getting swept in from the ocean, with others taking advantage of that by dumping their own trash, leaving this place to become a garbage dump. A place fitting for someone viewed as trash by the world. Tears started falling down 𝗧𝗑's face as he began processing the day he had. He was laughed at by his entire class when his teacher revealed his plan to enroll in UA. He was ridiculed and threatened by 𝐭 as well, being reminded that he'll never become a hero. If it was just those things, he would call it a normal day for him. Then the suicide bait came. Then the near death to a villain, being saved by 𝗼𝐴, and meeting for the first time, asking if he could become a hero without a quirk, finding out 𝗼𝐴's secret, being told by his favorite hero that he doesn't have a chance. All in all, the worst day he ever had. What should I do now? 𝗧𝗑 asked himself as he looked across the sea. Should he finally give up his dream? Except that without a quirk, he can't become a hero. It would be the smart thing to do. After all, there are other fields that he would have a better chance at, even with his quirklessness. Careers that he could still do some good, save others in less flashier ways. It wasn't completely hopeless. Giving up now would be better for him. That's what he told himself. But despite his own thoughts, no matter how many times he tried repeating this in his head, I don't want to give up, 𝗧𝗑 declared to himself, a fresh wave of tears trailing down his cheeks. I still want to be a hero. to save others with a smile on my face, despite being told by All Might, the #1 hero, the man he grew up idolizing, telling him that he doesn't have a chance. There's still this part of him that yearns for that dream, that still believes it's possible. But what can I do? Izuku wondered. Without thinking, he began pacing around the beach. Without power, there's always going to be a villain you won't be able to beat, someone always above my level. If there's someone that's able to permanently injure All Might, what chance do I have to? Ugh. Suddenly, the boy bumped into one of the trash piles by the shoulder, causing him to yelp and stumble. Some of the junk that was piled on fell to the ground, littering the beach even more so, biting back a groan of pain. Izuku turned to the pile he bumped into, and in that moment, he spotted something amidst the fallen pile. Is that a support item? Curious, he bent down and picked up the support item. Said item in question was a glove, made of a combination of leather, cloth, and metal. Curious, he put the item on, wondering what it could do. He got his answer immediately. With no warning, the glove pulled itself into one of the junk piles, dragging a startled Izuku with it, letting out a yelp. The boy found himself stuck in one of the pieces of metal junk. A magnetic glove. Izuku muttered in wonder. From what he could guess, this must have been made to scale metal buildings or interiors, potentially useful in certain situations, though it could give far more versatility if it was capable of sticking on any type of surface. If a hero lacked any quirks capable of freely moving around areas, such as flying or high jumping, then this would potentially offset that, and that when something clicked in Izuku's head. Perhaps, could I use support items to shorten the gap, get the power I lacked? While it wasn't common with the more popular heroes, there have been pros that use support items to cover for their weaknesses. There are even those that use those items to use their quirks in ways that they couldn't in their based forms. Why didn't he think of this before? This could be the way he could match those with quirks. But would it be enough? The pessimistic side of him couldn't help but wonder. There's still those that could match the likes of Best Jeanist, Endeavor, Edgeshot, even All Might. Would support items really be enough for me to become a hero? No one else could believe he could do it. Not any of his classmates, not his teachers, not his former friend, not All Might, not even his mother. So why should he continue deluding himself into thinking that he's able to? Can't I just be able to believe in myself for once? That one strayed thought stopped all other cynical musing to a halt. Had he ever truly believed himself? Was there ever a time where he could confidently say that he could become a hero? Made any sort of attempt on that path? I've always told myself that I had to believe in myself, even if no one else did. Izuku mused to himself. But did I ever take that statement to heart? The answer, no, though he hadn't. He never seriously trained himself physically, never pushed himself to learn some form of martial arts. The idea of using support items only just now came to him. And while he created his hero journals in the hopes that they would be useful, honestly, it was merely to distract himself from the pain. But why? Even though becoming a hero was his dream, why had he never actively moved to that dream? The answer came quickly. Because the world continuously screamed, even beaten into him, that he couldn't. And that's when a resolution formed in his head. Just this once, Izuku declared to himself. He clenched his glove-covered hand, grim determination now fueling his eyes. Just this once, I'll believe in myself. For once in my life, I'll work and aim to become a hero. At this point, he doesn't care if no one would believe in his dream. Doesn't care what the world says about his chances. Doesn't care that he would be surrounded by people abundantly stronger than he was. Don't even care if others try to physically stop him. All he cared about was becoming a hero that saves those with a smile on his face. That's all he ever wanted in his life. For once you're in a miserable life, Izuku, believe in yourself. With those thoughts in mind, he looked around the beach-turned-junkyard plans forming inside his head as he scanned for anything and everything. Proved the whole world wrong. Times 1 month later, a lot quickly changed when Izuku found his inner resolve. For one, he was now homeschooling. While there was still a part of him that was reluctant to leave Aldera, the new part of himself knew that he couldn't stay, that it was not healthy for him to be there while he still holds onto his dream. As much as he valued his former friendship with Kacchan, it was just that, a former friendship. His childhood friend didn't hold that same value, if he ever did, and was determined to beat it into his head that he would never be a hero. It was the same with the rest of the school. Plus, homeschooling would give him more time to work on becoming a hero, and he was smart enough to study by himself. The next thing was moving into a new apartment. He wasn't foolish enough to be certain that Kacchan wouldn't just hunt him down. Despite hating his very existence, he really did make it a mission to make his life as miserable as possible. So for safe measures, the change of address was needed. Thankfully, he managed to do both without explaining to his mother why he wanted to. She was worried, yes, and likely had her suspicions, but she didn't push and adhered to his selfish requests. Finally, he made moves to actually give himself the strength to save others and face villains. From strength exercises to build muscle mass, to any form of combat training he's able to study and practice, he did all he could think of to prepare himself for the UA entrance exam. That also included delving into creating support items. Okay, let's see if this'll work this time, 𝗧𝗍𝗄 muttered, strapping a pair of boots to his feet. Said boots were clearly metal, though looked to be sleek and slim. Hopefully, I won't crash into any of the trash piles this time. The boy also had on him a pair of gloves, a pair similar to the glove that he found a month ago, along with a pair of gauntlets, with one of them containing a mini screen across the front. Finally, he had on a camo hoodie along with camo pants. Once he made sure the boots were strapped on tightly, 𝗧𝗍𝗄 got up and proceeded to dial in something on the mini screen of his gauntlet. He then placed his arms down, bent his knees slightly, and jumped, which got him 6 feet in the air. 𝗬𝗲𝗄𝐴𝐴. 𝗧𝗍𝗄 screamed out, flailing around in the air. He ended up making a clumsy landing, hitting the sand with both his hands and knees and nearly crumbling altogether. Panicked breaths left his mouth. As well, the gear did what he wanted. He was far from being used to being in the air, even counting the failed attempts from before. Despite the rush, or maybe even because of it, a smile entered the teen's lips. The test was successful. Not only was he able to boost himself in the air, he's able to control the height to which goes up. Some refinement is likely needed, sure, but this was a big success. That's another piece of equipment in my arsenal, 𝗧𝗍𝗄 muttered to himself, taking out a journal and writing in it. Now, I should look into adding more offensive gear. 𝗧𝗵𝗶 Beach is proving itself to be a treasure trove for makeshift support gear. After finding that glove that day, he's been searching and cleaning through the wreckage in order to make his own gear. While it was a tough search, the reward was bountiful, with quite a few equipment now in his arsenal. A grappling gun that can help him move around more quickly. Magnetic gloves now capable of sticking onto any surfaces, not just metal. A set of camouflage hoodie and jeans that blend with the environment. All this he managed to find or create from the thrown away piles of junk. Who knew I could find a variety of support gear from the junk pile? 𝗧𝗍𝗄 mused to himself as he gathered some of the garbage around the area. Another thing he's been doing was cleaning up the area as he goes, as a way to get some physical exercise, with the added bonus of doing some community work. I mean, a lot of the stuff here is incredible. Why would anyone just throw them out? It was something 𝗧𝗍𝗄 could hardly understand. Many of the gear he managed to find and build have a lot of practical usage in hero work. Why throw them away and not find those who could use them? Well, if no one else can find use for these equipment, then I will, 𝗧𝗍𝗄 thought in determination. As someone lacking in everything, he'll find ways to make use of them. After a bit more cleaning, the green-haired boy began walking home. As he weaved through the crowd of people, he looked over his journal of support gear. The shock gloves would be tricky. I need to make sure the voltage doesn't end up hitting me, 𝗧𝗍𝗄 analyzed. I'll need to ensure that the volts only go to the glove, and not on any part of my body or clothes. Maybe I should move to range weaponry instead. Maybe a gun that shoots out volts of electricity. Again, I need to be careful with the voltage, less. As he was walking, he was mumbling out the thoughts in his head. There were a few weird looks coming from those around him, but other than that, no one bothered him, so he remained in his thought bubble, not paying much attention to his surroundings. However, he was brought out of that bubble when he felt something hit him by the waist. Whoa, unprepared for the sudden impact, 𝗧𝗍𝗄 ended up falling on his butt. Immediately, panic entered his eyes as he searched for the one who tackled him. Was it 𝐒𝐭𝐲? Did he find me? Is it someone from school? What? All panicked thoughts stopped when his eyes landed on the likely culprit. A little girl, likely 6 or 7, with long white hair and what looked to be a horn across her forehead. The girl had on a white shirt that looked too big for her, along with bandages wrapped loosely around her arms. She also had red eyes that were clearly filled with panic and desperation. Are you okay? Immediately, sat up on his knees to check on the girl, his eyebrows creasing with worry. What's wrong? Were you running? Rather than answer him, the girl latched onto one of his arms, the desperation in her eyes now clear across her face. Please, help. Don't let them take me. Who? Immediately, 𝗧𝗍𝗄 was on alert, trying to catch sight of anyone that looked to be after her. Bad guys, villains, bird masks, the girl answered frantically, her voice in a whisper. Please don't leave. Please. That's when 𝗧𝗍𝗄 caught sight of them. 2 adults, likely men, wearing plague masks that covered their entire faces and trench coats. If he would pick among the crowd who was looking for the girl, then those guys would be his top pick. They weren't too close to where they could see them amongst the crowd. In fact, they were fairly far, the plague masks being the things that made them distinct out of the crowd, so they had time to run. So with no hesitation, 𝗧𝗍𝗄 gathered the girl in his arms and headed the opposite direction of the masked men. It was that one act, that immediate call to help this girl, that shaped 𝗧𝗍𝗄's destiny. As a hero and a guardian, his first rescue despite the situation, 𝗧𝗍𝗄 didn't go into an all-out sprint. Not only are there too many people around, but it would make himself noticeable in the crowd, so he had to take it slow, weaving through the crowd as he put as much distance from the plague masked wearers as possible. While he was doing this, he kept the girl close to himself, shielding her as best he could from anyone seeing her from behind him. He's not sure if the two men saw him picking the girl up, but if they were unaware, then it's best not to let them become aware of this. That thought process also got him to pull up his hoodie so they won't be able to identify him by his green hair. As he weaved through the crowd, he did best not to turn into a panicked mess. Don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. Just keep putting more distance from them and head to the police station. He told himself, don't run, just walk for now. Don't put attention on yourself, just blend in with the crowd. This is like evading 𝐒𝐭𝐲 and his friends. Just don't get yourself cornered and you're fine. He repeated those thoughts in his head, as well as different backup strategies in case they managed to catch up to him. This helped him keep calm and not do anything drastic. His thoughts momentarily stopped when he heard the sound of bodies pushing one another, with startled yelps and cries accompanying it. That convinced Izuku to pick up the pace, resisting the desire to look behind and see what's going on. There should be an abandoned warehouse just around the corner. As soon as he was at that aforementioned corner, he turned, entering into a less crowded sidewalk. His eyes immediately were set on the second building of this section. This time, he ran, not worried about the two men seeing them at the moment and taking advantage of the thin crowd. As soon as he reached the front door, he twisted around and burst through the warehouse. Then he quickly closed the door behind him. I need somewhere to hide us, was what he immediately thought, his heart pounding. Unfortunately, there weren't that many places to hide in the warehouse, being empty as it is. Fortunately, he has on a camo suit that makes up for it. Alright, I'm gonna place it under my hoodie, Izuku whispered to the girl, causing her to look up. It'll cause us to turn invisible, so if the bad guys come here, they won't see us. I need you to stay quiet the whole time. Not make any sound. Can you do that for me? The little girl nodded her head rapidly. In response, the green-haired smiled down on her. That's good, he told her, pulling her away slightly in order to move his hoodie. I promise, everything will be okay. You won't be taken by the bad guys. Heading to one of the corners at the front part of the building, he lifted up his hoodie for the girl to crawl into. She didn't hesitate to cling onto his body once more. Once he covered her with his hoodie, he sat down and began fiddling with the mini screen across his forearm. A second later, his clothes blended with the surface around him. He then zipped up the front of his hood, effectively making himself invisible to the naked eye. Then they waited in silence for the two men to possibly come in. All the while, Izuku felt his heart pounding rapidly and sweat building up across his face. This could go wrong in so many ways. If one of them has a quirk that could see through camouflage, it's over. If they look around for some reason and bump into him, they'll be caught. If his camo suit decides to malfunction on him, today of all days, they'll be caught. If they're caught, he's likely dead, and the little girl will be taken for who knows what. But the chances for any of those things are minuscule. His camo suit has been working great, with no signs of error, and it's extremely doubtful that they would look around thoroughly enough in here to bump into him. There's a bigger chance for one of them to have a quirk that would detect him, but it's not big enough for it to give him too much thought. In other words, everything would have to go completely and utterly wrong in order for the both of them to be caught. And if worst comes to worst, he'll aim for the window and run for it. It's why he placed himself close to the windows. Finally, the period of waiting was over. Once again, the door burst open, and in came the two plague mask-wearing men. Both of them looked around the warehouse, and Izuku had to force himself not to move an inch when one of those masks faced his direction. Damn it, they aren't here, one of them cursed out. Where the hell could they have gone to? Beats me. The other side, frustration clear in his tone. Got a good look at the guy who grabbed her. All I saw was that he's wearing camo clothing. That's it. Well, they're just a pair of kids. They shouldn't have gone too far, right? That little girl shouldn't have been able to escape from us in the first place, but here we are. The first guy retorted, before groaning in fear. Man, if we don't manage to find that girl, Overhaul is gonna rip us to shred. See, calm down. He'll probably take out his frustration on the guy that was watching over her. The second one reassured the first, though he also sounded nervous. Besides, we still have plenty of time to find her. I'm sure she can't have gone too far. Let's fucking hope so. With that, the two left the warehouse, leaving the door open and unknowingly leaving the hidden duo alone. Slowly, Izuku stood up from the corner and creeped towards the window. He felt the little girl tense up from inside his hoodie, but didn't make any sound. Looking out, he saw the two plague-wearing villains walk further from the warehouse, likely looking around for any sight of them. Once he felt they were far enough, he made his move. Unzipping the front hood, he began typing on the mini screen. That caused his hoodie to turn white, and his pants blue instead of camo colors. I'm now very grateful I could change the color of this suit, Izuku mused to himself. It wasn't the intended use for the suit, but it's proving to be a useful tool, at least for this occasion. He pulled up his hoodie, letting the girl out from his clothes. She currently had her face buried into his shirt, likely to stop and muffle any sound from her. All right, the villains are gone now. Izuku told her softly, getting her to look up at him. Now we're gonna go outside and get farther away from them, okay? Again, the girl nodded rapidly, giving her another smile. He gently pulled her off his shirt in order to pull his hoodie down. He then shifted around so he could visibly shield her from behind once again, before taking one last look out the window. Seeing that the villains were too far to spot them, he headed out the warehouse, now to head to the police station. Izuku thought to himself, heading to the direction of the station and away from the criminals. Hey, Izuku whispered to the girls in his arms, careful not to lose track of where he's going. Can you tell me your name? The girl was silent for a moment, then whispered back, Eri. Nice to meet you, Eri. I'm Izuku. The teen introduced himself, smiling. Just hang tight, alright. We're gonna go find more help for us, and make sure the bad guys don't catch you. The girl, now named Eri, didn't say anything in response this time, merely cling onto him as tightly as she could, burying her face into his chest. 40. It didn't take long to get to the police station. Once he told the officers all that he knew, they quickly sat Izuku and Eri down at one of the interview rooms. A few of them tried to take Eri away, of course, in order to return her to her parents, but she refused to let go of him. In the end, they had little choice but to leave her with him for now. Soon enough, a detective named 𝗵𝗲 𝗔𝗂𝐁𝐵 told him about the men chasing Eri, how they were part of the Yakuza, that the man they mentioned, 𝗳𝗏𝗄, was their leader, and how the police had been trying to catch him for years, with little progress. That led to them asking Eri herself why she was held by them, and what she told the two. Just recalling them made him sick to the stomach. Thankfully, he and Eri's words, combined with 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐻's lie detection quirk, was enough to grant a search warrant against 𝗳𝗏𝗄. All they needed to do now was wait for him and his group to be taken down and arrested. While that was happening, the detective requested that Eri stay with Izuku, something that the boy happily agreed to. After hearing what she went through, he didn't want to leave her, and it's clear that she felt similarly. And since neither of the men saw his face, there was no need to worry about being sought for, though he needed to be driven home so that he doesn't accidentally end up encountering any of 𝗳𝗏𝗄's men. So the child and teen pair ended up being taken to the Midoriya's new apartment in a police car by the detective, something that his mother caught through the window of their home. Izuku, what happened? Why were you in a police car? Why is there a child in your arms? What happened? Mom, don't worry. I'm okay, Izuku assured his frantic mother. Silently, he comforted Eri by rubbing her back, feeling that she's shaking. I'm not in any trouble or anything. Detective 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝐁𝐵 just drove me home so we wouldn't be spotted by anyone. There's someone looking for you. Not me, specifically. The boy quickly corrected himself, before his mom could have a heart attack. They're looking for Eri here. They never saw my face, and they don't know who I am, and the detective just wanted to keep it that way. That seems to finally calm 𝗏𝗄 down some, the mother taking a few deep breaths to slow her beating heart. Once she was relatively calm enough, she turned her attention to the nervous bundle in Izuku's arms. Does that mean they were chasing the little one in your arms? Eri, Izuku nodded, before turning his attention towards the girl in question. Eri, this is my mom, 𝗏𝗄, he said softly to her. Want to say hello? Shyly, the white-haired girl slowly turned towards the mother. Hello. In response, 𝗏𝗄 smiled softly at her. Hello dear, it's nice to meet you. She responded back kindly. She then turned her attention back to her son. Why don't we talk about this in the dining room? Nodding once again, Izuku followed his mother to the dining room. Once they were settled in, he proceeded to explain all that happened, from his encounter with Eri to their evasion of 𝗳𝗏𝗄's two goons. I see, was all 𝗏𝗄 could say at the moment, as she mulled over what's been told to her. The three were now around the dining table, with Izuku and Eri sitting together while 𝗏𝗄 sat on the opposite side of them. Are you sure you weren't spotted by those men? In response, Izuku started keying the mini-screen across his sleeves, changing his clothes into the 𝗏𝗄 look from before. All they saw was someone with 𝗏𝗄 clothing. Typing on the screen again, it changed back into the white hoodie and blue jeans pair. If they turned around, all they would have seen was someone wearing a white hoodie and blue jeans. So your little projects helped you out, after all. 𝗏𝗄 sighed in relief. While she's trying her best to be supportive in whatever her son does, the mother knew what Izuku was creating all these gadgets for. It made her worried, seeing her boy so determined to become a hero, that would make stuff like this to do so. Now though, she had to be thankful that her son did so. Not only did he save a little girl, he also kept himself out of danger with that hoodie. Well, Eri, 𝗏𝗄 shifted her attention towards the young girl, giving another smile. You're welcome to stay here for as long as you want. You'll be safe here while the police capture the people that held you. At that, Eri found herself tearing up. WHY? Eri. Izuku looked down at the girl with slight concern. Are you okay? Why are you so nice to me? The little girl croaked out, her grip on Izuku becoming tighter. I'm cursed. A monster. I hurt people, make them disappear. I don't. Eri, stop. Izuku cut her off gently, yet firmly. Don't believe any of what 𝗳𝗏𝗄 said to you. He only says those things to hurt you. You're not cursed. You're not a monster." That caused the girl to look at him in disbelief. "But Eri, even if you did hurt others, you didn't want to, right?" "And no." Eri immediately shook her head at that, a few tears slipping from her eyes. "Then that means you're no monster," Izuku told her softly. "You merely have a gift, one that you need to learn to control. That doesn't make you a monster or make you cursed, just someone who's in need of help." Once again, the horned girl looked at him in shock. "A gift? Is it really a gift?" No one ever called her powers that before. To everyone who spoke to her, it was a curse. The boy then gave a soft, yet sad smile. "You deserve to be saved, to have help, to be treated with kindness by the people around her," he assured her. "And 𝗏𝗲 was the monster for hurting you. Don't ever doubt that." Aye. That was seemingly the last straw for the traumatized little girl. The tears that were being held back slid out in waves, as heartbreaking sobs left Eri's mouth. She buried herself in Izuku's chest as she cried her heart out. In response, Izuku hugged her back, soothing her as best he could. All the while, his mother was looking at them with teary eyes and a proud smile. Izuku, her boy really did have that kind and heroic heart. It's something that she can't help but feel pride for. But it also fills her with worry for his future. 1 week later, the arrest of 𝗏𝗲 and his group, 𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗃, happened fairly quickly. Turns out, there was a civil war with the Yakuza group, with many of them rebelling against 𝗏𝗲. They apparently liked the previous boss much better, and after years of being ruled by 𝗏𝗲 with fear, many felt enough was enough. That gave the police the chance to come in the middle of it and catch them by surprise. It also explained how Eri was able to escape and run so far, without 𝗏𝗲 himself coming to retrieve her. He had his hands full with the rebellion in his organization, and once he found out about her escape, could only send 2 of his men after her. That, along with Eri's testimony, was more than enough to make arrests. Already having a warrant for investigation, the police were more than justified to gather a force of both officers and heroes to take down the group. It was news that elated Izuku once he heard about it from the detective. They no longer have to worry about 𝗏𝗲, or any of his loyal henchmen, coming after Eri. So long as they remain in the cells of Tartarus, she is permanently safe from their hand. However, that left the question of where Eri was gonna stay after this. In the week of the investigation and arrest, Izuku had bonded with the white-haired girl. Not a surprising thing, as Eri stuck to him like glue the entire week, only leaving his side whenever one or both of them had to do so. It would have been difficult not to grow close with her, with the knowledge of what she went through and especially with how similar the two were. However, her quirk was incredibly dangerous, and not something that can be ignored by the authorities. And with such little experience in handling such quirks, the green-haired teen doesn't see his chances of staying with Eri that high. Not to mention that his mom would have to agree with this as well. And while she adores Eri as much as he does, he doubts that she could afford adopting her and taking care of 2 children. Despite those setbacks, however, and despite the knowledge that raising Eri wouldn't be an easy thing, "I want her to stay with us, Mom. I don't want to leave her." The night of the news that 𝗏𝗲 was placed in prison, Izuku talked with his mother about the issue. The 2 Midoriyas were at his room, along with Eri, who was sleeping peacefully behind her savior. "You've really bonded with Eri, haven't you, dear?" 𝗏𝗏 commented, a soft yet sad smile across her face. Izuku nodded, caressing the horned girl by her arm. "I know it would be difficult raising her, but..." He trailed off, leaving his desire unsaid this time. "And she's been through enough already. I don't want to risk adding to her trauma by separating from her." 𝗏𝗏 nodded in understanding. She knew from Izuku's story that up until Eri bumped into him, no one actually went and helped her, even when she was out of the Yakuza's grasp. Her boy was the first person ever to offer a helping hand, as well as a source of kindness, something that undoubtedly left a deep impression on the young girl. And for Izuku, Eri became one of the rare sources of happiness for him. She knew quite well that thanks to his quirklessness, he wasn't treated well by the people around him, something that continues to gnaw at her heart. She even knew that he was bullied, despite his attempts to hide such things, and suspected that the amount was quite heavy at that. It's why she agreed to his request to be homeschooled, as well as find a new apartment. Because of it all, her son had little in what got him to smile, despite her attempt to have it otherwise. But during the week they had Eri, Izuku had been smiling more than ever. Whenever he spent time with her, played with her, taught her things about the world, his eyes lit up similarly to whenever he's writing in his journal. Eri had become part of Izuku's world, and Izuku became Eri's world. And with that in mind, then I'll talk with whoever I need to in order to keep Eri here. That caused Izuku to shoot his head up with widened eyes, surprised by his mother's statement. "Really? Are you sure we'll be able to?" the boy asked, trying not to get his hope rising. "I'm certain I'll be able to convince them that she's safe in our care." 𝗏𝗏 reassured him. "I understand why you want Eri to stay in our lives, and I can see how happy she makes you. If you think you're able to take care of her from this point on, I'm willing to see about adopting her." Her words got Izuku to tear up. However, kept himself from openly crying for once, not wanting to wake Eri up and have her panicky. "Thank you, Mom. I promise, I'll do my best to help care for her and give her the happy life she deserves, just like you did for me." That touched 𝐻𝐭's heart, with the older Midoriya tearing up herself. Sitting quietly beside her son, she wrapped him in a tender hug. "I'm happy to hear that, sweetie." And with that, came a new member of the Midoriya family, the second 𝗵𝗏. When Izuku and his mom planned on adopting Eri, the boy expected the process to be difficult, that due to her quirk, the authorities wouldn't feel too comfortable letting them raise her. At the very least, there would have been some conditions for that to take effect. What he didn't expect was for them to just hand Eri over to them, with monthly paychecks to go with it, and hefty paychecks at that. Izuku could only stare at the check in his hand in disbelief. "Don't act so surprised. We're asking you to risk life and limb by basically taking care of the girl." Sitting across Izuku was a suit-cladded woman, with long black hair and sunglasses. "There's not that many people in Japan willing to take that risk. It makes sense to compensate you for it." That kinda makes sense. Still mind-boggling for the 14-year-old, but he could see her point. The day after the news of Overhaul's arrest, rather than meeting at the police station or somewhere else, the woman in front of them met with the Midoriyas at their apartment. Said woman called herself Agent 𝗵𝗲, who's a member of an agency called the Overpowered Children Division, a government agency created to deal with rare cases of extremely powerful children. The goal of the OCD is to ensure that any children with very powerful and uncontrollable quirks are placed with guardians that are willing and capable of taking care of them. However, with those kids having these powerful and quirks, there are very few willing to take them in, even fewer that could adequately care for them. That, ultimately, led to this, with Agent 𝗵𝗲 sitting at the dining table with both Izuku and 𝐻𝐭, basically offering the adoption papers to them, with a monthly check incentive to boot. "We'll also give you the proper tools needed to help train her with her quirk," the agent continued. "Won't be too difficult. While it's dangerous, Eri's quirk is pretty simplistic, so no need for anything too fancy. Thank you for this." 𝗏𝐭 then spoke up, signing the papers for adoption. "I'm glad we're getting help for Eri, on top of letting us continue to take care of her. Hey, you're making it easy for us by happily adopting the girl," 𝗵𝗲 remarked with a shrug. "Doing this saves us a lot of work, trust me." The process was not what Izuku was expecting. This was a lot easier than it probably should be, at least that's what he felt. But, as he took the offered pen from his mother and signed his portion of the adoption papers, he certainly wasn't complaining about it. And no doubt Eri will have little to complain about either. 40 As soon as Izuku went into his room, he found himself tackled by a white blur. The boy stumbled a little, with a small yelp leaving his mouth, but he was able to remain standing as the tackler wrapped her arms around his waist. "Hello, Eri," Izuku greeted with a smile, patting the girl's head. "Thank you for waiting in my room while we were talking. I'll be sure to make a nice treat with apples, like I promise." During the week of the investigation, apples became Eri's favorite food. She certainly wasn't picky about anything served on the table, but it was noticeable that apples were her favorite among the things served to her. So when confronted with the girl's unwillingness to leave his side for even a second, the promise of an apple-based treat helped quell her into waiting in his room, on top of plenty of reassurance that he wouldn't disappear or anything. "So, there's a few things that I want to tell you," Izuku said, causing Eri to look up from her hug. "Mind if we sit down while we talk?" After getting a nod from the girl, the two went to his bed and settled there, with Eri now clinging onto his side. Stroking her hair lightly, Izuku continued. "Do you remember the nice detective we talked with, that drove us home? Well, he called yesterday, and told me that Overhaul and all his men got caught." Eri looked at him with wide eyes, hope swelling in them. Really? He's taken away?" Izuku nodded, smiling softly down at her. "He'll be in jail for a long time, and far away from you," he reassured her, "so he won't be able to ever hurt you again." Those words hit Eri like a truck. In a near instant, tears swelled up her eyes before trailing down her cheeks. The young girl then began to let out sobs of relief and joy, before burying herself into Izuku's side once more. Thank you," she sobbed out. "Thank you so much." The boy hugged her in return, feeling his heart break for Eri. "It's okay. I just did what anyone else would have done." The girl shook her head vehemently in response. "No one else did. No one else tried. Only you did. You saved me." Izuku couldn't find a suitable response to that, so he merely held as she cried her out, feeling his heart clench with a mix of feelings. Sorrow for what she had to go through, rage at what that monster did to her, and happiness that he was able to get her out of that. Once Eri settled down enough, Izuku continued. "There's also one other thing." His words caused her to look up once again. "Eri, what do you think about staying here? For good?" Once again, the little girl stared up at him in shock. You mean?" Izuku gave another soft smile. "The talk with the lady in the dining room. It was about letting you live here," he revealed. "And she was more than happy to let us continue taking care of you." And yet again, his words hit the young girl hard. At the start, she knew that she was staying with Izuku until Overhaul was captured. However, after that, she wasn't sure where she would go. Deep inside, she was afraid to be taken away from 𝐒𝐿, the first person to ever show her kindness, a fear that she kept inside, not wanting to upset or burden her savior. But now she heard that she can continue to stay here, that she doesn't have to leave him. When he saw Eri tear up once again, the boy pulled her up into his lap before bringing in a full hug. The young girl returned the hug as best she could, letting out tears of joy rather than relief this time. And of course, that prompted 𝐒𝐿 to begin his own waterworks, tears now sliding down his eyes. Times 2 weeks later, thanks to the first week of Eri's stay, along with the monthly paychecks given to them, adjusting to a third person was relatively easy. They used the money to buy Eri everything she needs, from clothes to a bed of her own. And with 𝐒𝐿 being homeschooled, he could take care of her while his mom went out to work, so they didn't need to leave her by herself. Eri herself was the happiest when spending time with 𝐒𝐿. And the boy himself found his day lightened up with his new little sister. Didn't matter what they were doing, be it finding fun activities at home, teaching her things, or simply watching TV, both of them enjoyed whatever time they spent with one another. However, there would have to be one issue he could name. It would be his pursuit of becoming a hero. He hadn't given up his dream, far from, in fact. Knowing what Eri had to go through at the hands of 𝐿 merely incentivized him further to save those like her. But now that she's in their care, he has to balance taking care of the girl and preparing for the career he's aiming for. Not an easy thing to do, considering that Eri doesn't like leaving his side for even a second. However, it was still more than doable, and with some reworking of his schedule, he's able to find time to train and prepare himself. Alright, Eri, when you're using your quirk, imagine running water in a sink, 𝐒𝐿 advised the girl. The two were in his bedroom, with Eri on his bed while 𝐒𝐿 sat across from her in his chair. In Eri's hands was an apple core that she previously ate. Imagine moving the switch slowly, and the water slowly coming out. One of the new daily activities was training her quirk, Rewind, the ability to rewind any living organism to its previous state. A very powerful ability, one that 𝐒𝐿 can see Eri using for great things in the future. However, the drawback is that it's very uncontrollable, and that she could rewind anyone and anything to a time before they even existed. That made the quirk incredibly dangerous, and was the cause of the death of her father. Thus, training is needed so that her quirk doesn't remain out of control, and so she can safely use it in the future. To do that, 𝐒𝐿 took to showing Eri the water in the sink being turned on and off slowly. Give her that visualization in her mind for when she practiced with her quirk, and it seems to be working. With her horn grown and glowing, and her face scrunched in concentration, the apple was slowly growing back into its full, uneaten form. About 3/4 of it was restored, and the rest suddenly grew back in an instant. And before 𝐒𝐿 or Eri could do or say anything, the apple then shrunk and disappeared from Eri's grasp. Eri clenched the empty air in frustration, a frown now across her face. It's all right. It takes more than a few tries to get your quirk under control, 𝐒𝐿 assured her. Now, try turning it off. Imagine moving the nozzle slowly, turning the running water off. Concentrating once again, Eri closed her eyes and did what 𝐒𝐿 told her to. Slowly, the horn began receding back to its regular form, before growing back once again, sparks flying from it. Arg! Eri cried out in exertion and frustration, trying to wrestle control back into her hand. Unfortunately, her rising emotions made it even more uncontrollable, making her quirk more unstable. Seeing this, 𝐒𝐿 immediately grabbed the dart gun on his leg and shot Eri in the arm. That got a yelp of pain from the girl, with her clutching the area the dart hit, before feeling droopy and then falling over on the bed, her horn now fully resetting itself into its base form. Well, at least the running water idea seems to be working, 𝐒𝐿 mused, a tad sadly. That's more progress being made than last week, at least, but it's going to take a while before Eri fully masters her quirk. Even just turning it off and on took incredible effort on her part. Still, 𝐒𝐿's confident that Eri will eventually get the hang of using it. I just wish I didn't have to shoot her every time. The green-haired boy sighed, looking at the gun in his hand with a conflicted expression. It was issued to him by the 𝐒𝐿 for whenever Eri's quirk went out of control. He wasn't a fan of using it, for obvious reasons, but he understood it was needed so that no one gets harmed by her quirk. A necessary evil, as it were. Shaking away the thoughts for the time being, 𝐒𝐿 placed the dart gun on the table before getting himself ready to go out. There's a few things he wanted to do, and with Eri out of it for a bit, he has the time. The first place he went was 𝗳𝗏𝗄 Beach. He goes there early in the morning now, or whenever Eri is knocked out from quirk training, to further clear the beach out and find new material to scavenge. Afterwards, he planned to go to the store to get a few extra items for his current main project, as well as a bag of apples for Eri. They just ate up the last few today, so he figured now would be a good time to buy some for Eri. Think today, I'm gonna see about converting the magnetic gloves into shock ones, 𝐒𝐿 mused as he carried some of the junk in his hand. If I combine the gloves usage, then it would be easier than just switching to whatever gloves I need. But I need to figure out what material I need for that. Well, perhaps some of the rusted cars here will help with that. How rusted cars ended up on the beach, Izuku could only guess. Likely have something to do with all the illegal dumping. And that's how Izuku time went for the next half hour, cleaning up whatever he could in the form of exercises while occasionally taking anything interesting or useful. Once half an hour passed, he took a step back to observe his progress, wiping a bit of sweat from his forehead. Well, there's less junk compared to last month, Izuku analyzed as he looked at the large pile of trash. But I still have a lot more to go through. While the addition of Eri made things a tad complicated, Izuku is still confident he would be able to clear this place by the time of the UA entrance exam. And even if he couldn't, he would still develop enough skills, muscle mass, and support gear to have more of a fighting chance to pass. Alright, now for a quick stop at the market, and then head home, Izuku said to himself as he turned around to head to the market. And was promptly knocked back by something colliding on him. Izuku let out a startled yelp before falling on his butt. Oh, what was? Opening his eyes, he was met with a green-haired, green-skinned little girl in front of him. One that wore raggedy-looking clothes, as well as a panicked expression. The green-haired teen was hit with a suspicious feeling of déjà vu. Then he heard loud, angry voices from the distance, and turned his head to see a group from afar, rapidly coming their way. Yep, this was looking very familiar to the teen. The girl seemed to also take notice of them, which got her to cling on to Izuku desperately. Please, help, she begged, the desperation very clear in her tone. Don't leave, they'll hurt me, please. It was clear that the green-skinned girl was very exhausted, likely meaning that she's been evading her pursuers for a while now, which meant she couldn't continue running like she had been, not without collapsing. He quickly gathered the girl in his arms before leaping down back into the junkyard. He ran deep into the piles of junk before hiding behind one of the stacks, trusting that the large piles around them could conceal them from outside view. He then peeked from behind the stack he's hiding behind, eyes narrowed. It took a bit before the group he spotted got to where and the girl were at. From where Izuku was hiding, it looked to be a group of guys, either older teens or young adults, all of them having gangster looks and clothing. They also looked to be incredibly angry for some reason, likely due to whatever reason they were chasing the girl in his arms. I saw them jump in that junkyard. He heard one of them shout, pointing at the beach, spread out and find that little brat. When he saw the group, likely a gang, coming down to the beach, Izuku quickly moved from his hiding spot. Don't make any noise, he whispered to the girl, as softly as he could. We're gonna hide from those guys here, keep them from spotting us, okay? Oh, okay, the green-skinned girl replied back, clinging tightly to him, patting her head in comfort. Izuku focused on evading the group. You know this area, they don't. Keep far, keep eyes on them, keep from getting cornered. When you see a good opening, take it and go. And so the time was spent hiding and evading the gang after the girl. Whenever one or two got too close, he moved to another part of the beach. When it sounded like he could get cornered, he climbed on top of the junk with his gloves or distracted them by throwing something solid a distance away from him. We weaved around the beach, careful not to make any accidental sounds, and keeping far enough away from the thugs. It helped that none of them seemed that bright, or that stealthy, judging from the sounds they make. Eventually, Izuku and the girl found themselves close to the exit. The quirkless teen was currently hanging on one of the large piles of junk, one of the more unstable piles, with the green-skinned girl clinging on his front. On its own, it wouldn't fall, but a strong enough push will cause it to fall. So Izuku had to be careful not to do anything to make it fall. Arg, where the hell is the brat and that punkette? One of them cried out in frustration. They can't have disappeared, can they? Relax. This place is big. They are bound to be here somewhere. Another reassured the frustrated one. I can't wait to wring the neck of that little bitch. Izuku heard a third growl. She's gonna pay for what she did to our boys. That caused the girl in front of him to whimper fearfully, clinging to Izuku tighter. In response, the teen shushed her soothingly, using one hand to stroke hair to comfort her and keep her quiet. Peeking from the junk he's hiding behind, he saw that all 5 of the gangsters were turned away from the duo and moving further into the beach junkyard. Perfect. Now's my chance. He then began to climb down a few steps, planning to book as fast as he could while their pursuers were unaware. And then his phone started ringing. Both Izuku and the girl froze, dread quickly filling both of them. A second later, they heard 5 men talking. Huh, is that? It's coming from over there. Plan B. Quickly typing a few things on his forearm monitor, he faced the exit of the beach, bracing his arms and legs. Hold on. Trusting the girl will keep to him tightly, Izuku pushed himself off the junk pile, his booster pushing him far. As they flew in the air, the boy curled himself protectively over the little girl to absorb the damage. When they landed, the two rolled in the sand, before coming to a stop close to the stairs above. Izuku quickly got up, spitting out the bits of sand that got into his mouth, and took a quick glance behind him before booking it. He jumped high once again, sailing over the stairs, before landing and running. As he ran, he heard large crashing sounds behind, as well as the cries of shock and fear. Hopefully, it doesn't kill anyone, 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 thought with a bit of worry. That was his plan B on the chance that any of the gangsters spotted him. He made it to where several of the junk piles were unstable enough to fall. That should lead to a domino effect, where the piles would fall on top of each other and cascade around the gangsters. At the very least, it'll slow them down enough. At most, it'll put them to a stop in their chase. However, he didn't allow himself to look at his handiwork, not wanting to risk fate by stalling. The girl, however, was able to, and her dark purple eyes could only stare over 𝐒𝐴z𝑘's shoulder in amazement as the piles of junk fell around her pursuers. Another part of Mustafa City, 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 didn't stop until he felt clear from any of the gangsters. Once he was deep into the city, stopped in an alleyway to rest, leaning on the wall behind him. Heavy breaths left his mouth as he attempted to catch them. I know that I'm not in the best of shape, but I shouldn't feel this tired, should I? 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 was well aware that he's pretty weak, especially before he started training. But he's been exercising for close to 2 months now, and even before, he was often on the run for something. So he shouldn't feel this tired, right? You saved me. He was brought out of his thoughts by the voice of the girl in his arms. He looked to see her looking at him with watery-eyed amazements. They were chasing me, and were going to catch me, and hurt me, and you. 𝐒𝐴z𝐿, you're safe now. 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 comforted the girl, bringing her close and stroking her hair. In response, the green-skinned girl gripped onto him tightly once more, tears of fear and relief slipping from her eyes. You saved me, she repeated once again through her tears. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Hey, don't worry about it. I'm glad I was able to save you, 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 told her softly. A part of him thought about asking why she was being chased, but with another glimpse at the state she's currently in, he decided to wait a moment before asking. So he pulled out his phone, taking the time to check who called him. Turns out, it was his mom. She must have got worried since I haven't returned home yet. Before he left, 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 told his mom that he would be back in around an hour. And judging by the time on his phone, it's been past that allotted time he gave himself. So preparing for an overly worried phone call, 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 called back the missed number, trying to control his labored breathing. Said breathing caught the attention of the young girl, who looked up at him in concern. Mister, before 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 could take notice of her concerned murmur, his call was picked up, and he was met instantly with the worried voice of his mother. 𝐒𝐴z𝑘, are you all right? Where are you? You said you'd be back by now, but… Mom, I'm all right. I'm all right. 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 quickly spoke up, trying desperately not to sound weak or exhausted. I just got sidetracked is all. What happened? Well, it was getting harder and harder to speak now, his breath getting more and more labored. What's going on? Why does he feel so tired? So, mister, are you okay? The girl called out, sounding even more concerned. When he looked down, he saw a fearful look from the child. Did I? Is that another voice? Are you with someone? 𝐒𝐴z𝑘, hearing the girl from the phone, questioned. 𝐒𝐴z𝑘, are you sure you're all right? Honestly, no, he's not sure. And just as he thought that, he found himself falling flat on the ground, dropping his phone and his grip on the green-skinned girl gone. Now, he realizes how sweaty he felt, how pale his skin was, and how weak his body was feeling. His vision got blurry as the girl shook and called out to him, looking completely panicked now. From his side, he barely picked up the voice of his mother from the phone, who sounded just as panicked and fearful. Those were the last things he saw or heard before everything turned back. Ivy skin when 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 woke up. Instead of the alleyway walls, he was met with a white ceiling. He blinked multiple times to be rid of any blurriness before looking around. Quickly, he recognized that he was in a hospital room. Ah, you're awake. 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 turned his head to the door to see a male doctor coming through it. Still look rather weak, but recovering, so that's good. WH, what happened? The green-haired teen asked weakly, pushing himself up. The green-skinned girl. Is she okay? Where's? Looked down at the bed. 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 did so, to see not only the green-skinned girl he saved on one leg, but also 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 on his other leg. 𝐒𝐴z𝑘, your mother and little sister came by some time ago. The doctor explained. Your mother had to leave for a bit, but your sister remained here with the other girl. 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 nodded. That made sense. The only thing that confused him, however, short story is that you were poisoned, and you needed to be detoxified. The doctor answered his unasked question. The long one. The girl's name here is Typha, and her quirk is called Ivy Skin. One touch of her skin leaves a toxin that drains you and leaves you sick. Long enough contact with her can kill you. From the looks of it, any direct contact between you two was brief, so that's fortunate. 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 blinked a few times, processing that info. Yep, that would explain it. He must have accidentally had direct contact with her skin while he was running. Or when he jumped and they were rolling in the sand. All his thoughts at the time was to escape from those gangsters, and neither had the time nor the knowledge to worry about skin contact with her. 𝐒𝐴z𝑘, is Mr. awake? 𝐒𝐴z𝑘 quickly looked down to see the two girls in front of him slowly wake up. Once they were fully awake, their eyes were immediately set on boy's form. "Izuku, you're awake." Eri immediately jumped on him and clung onto him, tears pooling her eyes. "You're okay," she said tearfully. "You're okay, you're okay, you're okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to touch you." The other girl, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, on the other hand, got on her hands and knees before repeatedly apologizing. "I didn't want to poison you. I mean it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Hey, it's okay. It's okay." Izuku patted Eri in comfort as he went to reassure both girls. One hand moved to pat 𝗧𝗵𝗲 as well before stopping, remembering what 𝗧𝗵𝗲's quirk was. As he was doing so, the doctor moved to the exit. "Your mother is in the lobby right now, so I'll let her know that you're awake." "Excuse me." He then left, leaving the two kids and the teen alone together in the room. Eventually, Izuku managed to calm the two down enough, leaving a momentary silence between them. Within the silence, the green-haired teen put his focus on 𝗧𝗵𝗲. "Hello, my name is Izuku. I am 𝗧𝗵𝗲." The girl responded hesitantly. She looked down guiltily. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to use my quirk on you." Hey, don't worry. It's all right." Izuku quickly interrupted, giving her a reassuring smile. "I know that it was an accident, and I'm still alive, so things are okay." That earned a look of surprise from the girl. You're not angry with me?" "Of course not. Why would I? People would get angry with me when I accidentally touch people," 𝗧𝗵𝗲 answered, looking down sadly. "They get angry or get scared of me, and yell and throw things at me." That's when Eri spoke up. "Izuku won't do that." The white-haired girl moved her head to give the green-skinned one an earnest look. "He's a nice person. He would never do those things." Izuku was surprised, as well as touched, that his adopted sister would speak up for him when he knew that she had trouble even looking at others outside of home. Shaking off his surprise, he put his focus back on 𝗧𝗵𝗲. "She's right. I won't ever hurt you or get angry at you for touching me. After all, it was an accident, right?" "Oh, of course." 𝗧𝗵𝗲 nodded her head rapidly at that. "Then there's no reason for me to get angry at you," Izuku told her simply. "After all, I'm up now." His words got the ivy-skinned girl to tear up, with her lips trembling. "You promise?" Izuku smiled in response, a smile filled with a tad bit of amusement. "If I could, I would make a pinky promise with you. How about when I get my gloves back?" That got a giggle from the girl, a wobbly smile now across her face. "Deal, Izuku." The boy turned his head towards the one calling him, just in time to see his mother kneel at the side of his bed, tears falling like waterfalls. "The doctor just told me that you woke up. I was so worried. Are you okay? You don't have any other injuries, do you?" "I'm fine, Mom. I'm okay," Izuku assured her. "Other than the poison, I didn't get a scratch on me." Hearing that, 𝐭 took a few deep breaths to calm herself. "That's good. I'm glad you're okay, sweetie. That makes two of us. Would have caused some trouble if you weren't." Again, Izuku jerked his head up to see Agent 𝗵𝗲 standing at the doorway. "Agent 𝗵𝗲," Izuku spoke in surprise. "Yo, didn't expect to see you again so soon," the agent said casually, walking to the group. "And with another kid in your lap, no less." "I'm kinda surprised too," Izuku responded with a sheepish chuckle. Then a thought came to mind. "Wait, is 𝗧𝗵𝗲 considered an overpowered child?" "Yep," 𝗵𝗲 answered, slipping into the chair near the bed. "Being able to poison anyone with just a touch definitely qualifies. That's why I'm here, instead of relaxing on my couch." Did she have to add that last part? Both mother and son thought. "Anyways, in case you were wondering, those gangsters that we're chasing are all arrested," the agent continued. "The girl gave us info on where they were at, and the police went out to snatch them. If there's any more of them still lying around, they'll be caught soon." "Guess that means I didn't get anyone killed," Izuku thought with some relief. While it was no doubt those guys were thugs, considering how willing they were to hurt a child, he didn't want to kill them. And with them out of the way, that just leaves where to take 𝗧𝗵𝗲 here. "Wait, what about her parents?" Izuku inquired, a bad feeling being placed in his gut. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was the one to answer. "They threw me out," she said, sniffling a little. "Said that I was a poisonous mistake, that I should be someone else's problem." Of course, that caused the green-haired teen's stomach to drop further. "That's horrible." "No kidding. Didn't even have the decency to call us and save us all the hassle," 𝗵𝗲 groaned, before perking a little. "Oh, I'm hoping you'll take up the slack for them." That got a look of confusion from the quirkless teen. "Hey, 𝗵𝗲," 𝗏 spoke up warningly. Right. No pressuring him, got it." The agent raised her hand up in surrender, before shifting attention to the two young girls. "Hey girls, mind giving us the three of us some privacy for a bit? We need to talk with your hero about something." Izuku felt his heart skip a beat in the casual way 𝗵𝗲 referred to him as a hero. However, he quickly squashed any rising feelings on it, knowing it wasn't that serious of a statement on the agent's part. Pushing down those feelings was made easier when he felt Eri squeeze his waist tighter, indicating that she doesn't like the idea of leaving his side. "Hey, it's okay," Izuku told her softly, rubbing her back. "We'll just be talking for a little bit. I'll be right here when you come back in. He turned his head to 𝗧𝗏. Can you keep Eri company while we talk, please? 𝗧𝗏 nodded with childish determination. I'll make sure Eri doesn't be lonely. After a bit more coaxing, Eri reluctantly detached herself from Izuku before she and 𝗧𝗏 left the room. Once they left, Agent 𝗵𝗲 quickly went to business. So, as mentioned, her parents threw her out. She stated, and with her OPC status, it'll be so difficult finding a new home for her. If there was someone who already proved themselves to be a good caretaker, who already has the girl's trust, and wouldn't hold a grudge for being accidentally poisoned, then there would be no worries about where she'll go. If she was trying to be subtle, she wasn't being good at it. Mom, before he could make any decision though, Izuku turned to his mother, wondering what she had to say about this. I'm leaving the decision up to you, Izuku. 𝐭𝐸 told him. You'll be the one taking care of her, if you accept. Plus, with the checks that come with OPCs, money isn't something to worry about. But, why leave it up to me? Even if he would be the one taking care of both Eri and 𝗧𝗏, he knows that this isn't a decision that should be left to someone his age. I trust you, dear. I know you're mature enough to handle decisions like this, 𝗏𝐸 said with clear certainty. I also know that you wouldn't just want to leave 𝗧𝗏 without knowing she'll be okay. That caused the boy to look away sheepishly, knowing that she's right. With her status as an OPC, it would be significantly harder to find a good home for her, and wasn't sure if he could fully trust the OCD to find a good place for 𝗧𝗏, with how reluctant Agent 𝗵𝗲 seems to be regarding the job. How likely is it that 𝗧𝗏 would end up in a bad home? Izuku asked the agent warily. Enough that you probably wouldn't feel comfortable about it, 𝗵𝗲 answered, folding her arms together. Trust me, despite my demeanor, I do take this job seriously. Would be counterproductive otherwise, and leave me with more work. Very few are willing to take that risk. Even fewer that can adequately care for these kids. And you think a quirkless teenager can handle another OPC because? That should tell you the state of Japan's compassion for these kids. Izuku bit his lip at that. He knew that adopting a second child would make obtaining his goals a bit more difficult. But the thought of leaving it up to fate for where she'll end up leaves an ill feeling in stomach. What kind of hero would be if he wasn't willing to provide another child a home if he could? All right, I'll adopt her. Izuku eventually accepted. 𝗵𝗲 grinned at that. Yes, another day of paperwork avoided. She quickly pulled out the adoption papers and a pen before placing them on the bed. You're quickly becoming my favorite person, kid. Not sure if I should be happy about that. Hey, it never hurts to have a friend in the government. Izuku decided to not comment on that, merely signing his portion of the adoption papers before handing them to his mother. Once she signed her part of the papers, 𝗵𝗲 gathered them up and placed the papers in her satchel. All right, I'll let the kids come back in, so you can bring the good news. Later, kiddo. With that, the agent got up and left the room, leaving the door open. Moments later, both girls ran back in, with Eri quickly climbing up and getting back to hugging Izuku. 𝗧𝗏 also climbed up, though kept a bit of distance away from the two. Mr. Izuku, I kept Eri from being lonely, as promised, she stated proudly. Izuku smiled at that. Thank you, 𝗧𝗏. I'm glad to hear that. He then turned his attention to Eri. Did you enjoy her company, Eri? Eri nodded across his side. She's nice, she muttered, looking up at her brother. And she's like me, like us. Immediately, Izuku understood what she meant. Eri knew about his quirklessness and what hardship it brought him in the past, having been told around the weeks she started living with him. Before that, she just knew that he went through suffering of his own, claiming that he had eyes similar to her own. So when she said that 𝗧𝗏 was like them, it meant Eri could see that the green-skinned girl went through her own share of suffering. Yes, she is. Izuku could only agree with her statement. He then put his focus on both of them. So, what do the two of you think about living with each other? That got both girls looking at him with wide eyes, hoping to pull into 𝗧𝗏's purple ones. Does that mean what I think it means? The green-skinned girl asked. Izuku smiled. We know that your actual family doesn't want you anymore, so you can come with us and be part of our family. For a moment, 𝗧𝗏 could only stare at him before a massive smile broke her lips. Thank you. In under a second, the girl burst forward and latched onto Izuku's other side, drawing a small yelp from him. Luckily, he moved his arm away, so there was no accidental contact. Thank you. I promise to behave. I'll be the best sister to both you and Eri, and I won't ever poison you again. With a smile and chuckle, Izuku carefully reciprocated the hug, wrapping his free arm around her. I know you will. With that came Midoriya's second new family member. 40 for 𝗧𝗏. The only things that were needed regarding her quirk were antidotes for her poison, along with long-sleeved clothing and dresses. The clothes make it easier for her not to touch anybody directly. And while she'll do her best not to touch anyone, accidents can happen, so antidotes were necessary just in case. Other than that, adjusting to their new family member was as easy as it was with Eri. So good. 𝗧𝗏 squealed through her mouthful of food. Eri, and 𝐒𝐿 were at the dinner table, the three of them eating shogoyaki with vegetables and rice. "Don't talk with your mouth full, 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗿," 𝗧𝗑 chided her softly. "You could choke." The girl quickly chewed the remainder of the food in her mouth before swallowing. "Sorry," she said sheepishly, "but your cooking is so good, 𝗧𝗑. As good as Miss 𝐒𝐿's." That got a blush from 𝗧𝗑. He couldn't help but duck his head a bit. "I don't know if I'm as good as Mom." "I do, though," 𝗧𝗵𝗶 stated in an innocent retort. "And your cooking is just as good, I swear." 𝐒𝐿 followed with a few nods. "I agree." She then spoke, her voice much softer. "I like it when you cook." The boy's blush spread even further. Thanks, you too." "I'm happy to hear that." 𝗧𝗵𝗶 was a big ball of talkative energy. It seemed like no matter the day or the time, she doesn't seem to run out of things to say or talk about. Reminds him of his own mutter streaks when he actually thought about it. It contrasts surprisingly well with 𝗍𝐿, who talks very little. There were times where the rewinder would get overwhelmed, but over time, she quickly got used to 𝗧𝗵𝗶's motor mouth. As the three finished up their meal and gathered up their plates, 𝗧𝗵𝗶 went up to 𝗧𝗑's side. "Hey, 𝗧𝗑," she began as she followed the teen to the kitchen. "I noticed that you go out every morning before me or 𝗍𝐿 get up from bed." That caused 𝗧𝗑 to look down at her in surprise. "You saw me?" 𝗧𝗵𝗶 nodded. "I woke up one time and saw you go out in that hoodie you wear." "But why? What are you doing?" "Oh, well, remember that beach I rescued you at?" 𝗧𝗑 reminded her as he placed all the dishes in the sink. "Well, I've been going there for a while now, and been cleaning up there." "You're trying to clean up all that junk by yourself?" 𝗧𝗵𝗶 exclaimed in shock. In response, 𝗧𝗑 chuckled. "It's good exercise, and somebody has to do it." 𝗧𝗵𝗶 looked at him in wonder. "You get cooler by the day, Mr. 𝗧𝗑." Tints of red immediately sprouted across his cheeks. "See, cooler," he squeaked out. "Yeah, you were already really cool with how you dealt with those bad guys chasing me. And 𝗍𝐿 told me that you saved her from bad guys too." 𝗧𝗵𝗶 exclaimed with clear admiration. "Cleaning that beach filled with mountains of trash makes you even cooler." Again, the red across his cheeks spread further. "It's not that big of a deal." "It is a big deal," 𝗧𝗵𝗶 argued. "I don't see many people even picking up an empty soda can they drop. You're trying to clean a whole beach by yourself. That's super cool." Compliments were a very foreign thing for 𝗧𝗑 Midoriya. Aside from his mother, there was no one in his life that would even spare him a kind word. So compliments like that, even from someone much younger than him, were super effective, leaving him incredibly flustered. "Anyways, that's where I go during the morning while you and 𝗍𝐿 are sleeping." 𝗧𝗑 quickly went back to the main question. "How about you go play with 𝗍𝗿 for a bit? I'm gonna be busy with the dishes for a minute." "Okay." With an enthusiastic nod, the green girl headed to where 𝗍𝗿 was at, though not before leaving 𝗧𝗑 with a big hug to the waist. "Thank you for taking me in. You're the coolest brother ever." With that, 𝗧𝗵𝗶 lightly ran out the kitchen, leaving 𝗧𝗑 with a small sink full of dishes and a burning face he hopes cools down soon. Inside 𝗍𝗿 doesn't like to admit it, but when she first met 𝗧𝗵𝗶, she was angry with her. Honestly, it would have been difficult not to feel anything bad when she heard that her 𝗧𝗑 was poison. He was her savior, after all, the one who reached a hand out to her when no one else would. And to hear that he got hurt by someone moments after waking up from her quirk exercise, it brought back that very familiar feeling of fear. The more foreign feeling of anger came soon after seeing 𝗧𝗵𝗶 on 𝗧𝗑's bed. But thankfully, that anger lasted only for a moment. Seeing how sorry and tearful 𝗧𝗵𝗶 was, and knowing that it was an accident, shifted her feeling of anger to one of sympathy. Because she could tell, 𝗧𝗵𝗶 was like her, someone who had a quirk that hurt others by mistake, and who was called a curse because of it. And now she likes her new sister. She talks a lot, to the point that 𝗍𝗿 gets a bit dizzy from time to time. But she's also very cheerful and nice, the former being something that 𝗍𝗿 lacks, she knew. "Hey 𝗍𝗿, why don't you ever smile?" The white-haired girl jolted a little at that, being unprepared for that question from 𝗧𝗵𝗶. The two were currently in their pajamas and in bed, the day having fallen to nighttime. Due to their only 3 rooms, both 𝗍𝗿 and 𝗧𝗵𝗶 had to share one together, along with the bed. Neither of them didn't mind, however, both of them being happy to keep each other company. Of course, that doesn't stop either of them from sharing a bed with 𝗧𝗑, oftentimes. What? Was all 𝗍𝗿 could say at the moment. "I noticed that you never smile, ever. Not at the hospital, or here at home." 𝗧𝗵𝗶 explained, looking purely curious. "But why? Why don't you smile?" 𝗍𝗿 stuttered, unsure of what to say. A small frown entered the green girl's face. Is it me?" she asked hesitantly, looking nervous. "Do you not like that I'm here? Are you angry with?" "And no," 𝗍𝗿 interrupted frantically, not wanting that misunderstanding. "It isn't you, I swear. It's just, I don't know how to smile." It earned a look of shock from 𝗧𝗵𝗶. "You don't, but everyone knows how to smile." Despite her exclamation, the young girl made sure to keep quiet. "It's just one of those things you can do. How can you not know?" 𝗍𝗿 frowned and looked away at that, still not sure what to say. It was something brought up by 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 as well, days before Izuku found Taifa. Smiles were just a foreign concept for the young rewinder. Before she ever met Izuku, there was never anyone that smiled around her. And she definitely didn't have anything to smile about with overhaul. Just the feeling of happiness was still something she's trying to get comfortable with. Is it because of your parents? Taifa then inquired, a frown striking her face yet again. Did they cause you to not smile? A pause. Inari shook her head. I caused my dad to disappear because of my quirk, she admitted, tearing up. And my mother gave me to bad men after. So, those bad men cause you to not smile. Inari nodded, not willing to say any more. She wasn't sure if she could hold herself together if she said anything more about her past. It took all that she could right now to block away the memories, the images, the pain. She was brought out of her inner turmoil by arms wrapping around her. Inari's head shot up, eyes wide with surprise, now noticing that Taifa got her in a hug. We really are the same, huh? Taifa said softly, eyes closed. Inari felt a few tears slip from her eyes, before slowly returning the hug. Yes, she whispered in agreement. We are. I'm gonna get you to smile one day, the green girl declared firmly. You don't need to be sad anymore. Neither of us do. Because we have a new home, a new family. So I'm gonna find ways to get you to smile. That strange, warm feeling came back into Inari's chest once again, as a few more tears slipped from her eyes. Yes, she definitely likes her new sister, and it made her feel guilty for ever being angry at her in the first place. No matter how short that was, she'll have to find ways to make that up to her, however she can. 40 How do I look? Taifa asked excitingly, spinning around in her new clothes. She, along with Izuku and Inari, are at a small clothing store trying out new clothes. The green girl currently had on a purple, long-sleeved dress with small gem-like buttons embedded in the middle. Black stockings were also across her legs and black pantyhose gloves were across her arms. You look good, Taifa. Izuku complimented her, a warm smile across his face. Inari nodded in agreement from beside him, the girl having on her red pinafore dress with a white dress shirt and stockings. Like a beautiful flower. That got a happy giggle from the girl, her cheeks gaining a darker green. I'm so glad we were able to find these stocking gloves. She cheered, showing off said gloves some more. They're much more comfortable than regular gloves. Today, the three were having an outing together, part of the reason being to find more clothes for both Taifa and Inari. It was a suggestion made by 𝐭, seeing that both girls' clothing options are limited at the moment, and it would give them the chance to find some gloves for Taifa as well. This was also a way to spend some time together and see about having some fun outside. Taifa was all for the idea, while Inari was more hesitant, and while Izuku could empathize with the latter's hesitancy. He knew that it wouldn't be good for any of them to be cooped up in the house. Thankfully, the idea of visiting an ice cream shop and getting an apple-based treat made the idea more appealing to the young rewinder. Alright, go change back to your original clothing so we can go buy them, Izuku told her, and with an eager nod, the green girl headed back into the dressing room. The next place they went to was, surprisingly, Dagaba Beach. The three were right at the stairs leading down to the beach, with the two girls standing near the edge. Here's the beach where Izuku saved me at, Taifa announced, sweeping her arms towards the beach. The girl was now wearing her original clothes, a long-sleeved green dress that almost blended with her skin. We met at this exact spot, with me literally running into him. That happened to us too, Inari murmured, looking at the beach with clear curiosity. I also ran into him. Really? What are the odds? Huh, Taifa said with some surprise. Anyways, after that, he saw the bad guys chasing after me, grabbed me, and jumped right into the beach. While she was telling the story, Izuku stood a few feet behind them, a small smile of embarrassment across his lips. During their outing, Taifa made it clear she wanted to come over here. She wanted to show off the area where he saved her to Inari, and give further details to their first meeting. Honestly, it's embarrassing, hearing the praise Taifa gives him from time to time. At the same time, though, it warms his heart to see his newest sister smiling and gushing about being rescued by him. It's a big reminder of why he wanted to become a hero, not just to save them, but to bring smiles on their faces while doing so. When his phone started ringing, I thought we were completely done for. Taifa continued on with her story. But then, he pushed off the junk pile we were on, causing it to fall and bump into another pile. Then another. Junk was falling all around those jerks. You can see the piles that fell. Right over there. As the green girl was recalling the event, Inari was listening with rapt attention. She turned her eyes towards where Taifa was pointing at, and saw the layer of junk amongst the piles. Wow, was all Inari could say on this, her eyes shining with wonder. I know, isn't our brother the coolest? And once again, the green-haired boy turned crimson red. Next up was the ice cream shop that was promised. Having already talked of what they would like to get, the three were able to order fairly quickly. Inari, of course, got an apple pie with 2 scoops of vanilla on top. Taifa decided on a chocolate vanilla soft serve swirl, and Izuku got himself green tea flavored ice cream. 𝗵𝗃 squealed through her closed mouth, bliss clear across her face. So good. 𝗵𝗃. Eri bobbed her head in agreement, her mouth full of pie. Izuku chuckled fondly at the girls' clear enjoyment of their treats, idly tapping his own bowl. Enjoying your ice cream? Definitely. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 nodded her head rapidly. This is the first time I ever had ice cream. It's so cold and so sweet. Izuku's smile turned slightly bitter at that. Even before being thrown out, 𝗧𝗵𝗲's relationship with her parents was not the best. From what he heard, the two were neglectful of the girl due to her green skin, something neither parent shared. The poison was merely the excuse they needed to throw her out. It led to the girl not having that much experience of eating good food, especially treats. As he took a scoop of his ice cream, something caught the corner of his eyes. Turning his head slightly, he saw two women at another part of the store, whispers and looks of distaste thrown in their direction. When he turned his head fully, those women immediately looked away, pretending as if they didn't notice the three. Izuku frowned. He had an idea as to why they were doing that, and suffice to say, he didn't approve one bit. Izuku, the quirkless teen, turned his head back to 𝗧𝗵𝗲, who was giving him a confused look, one that Eri shared. Is something the matter? Oh, it wasn't anything important. Izuku quickly waved off, not wanting either of the girls to notice the staring from one of the other tables. Unfortunately, a child's curiosity cannot be stopped that easily, and with a tilt of the head the green girl saw what Izuku noticed. Seeing the two women throwing distasteful looks gained a flash of realization in 𝗧𝗵𝗲's eyes, before a glum look crossed her face. Oh, she muttered sadly. Don't worry about it. People give those looks all the time, so I'm used to it. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, Izuku thought sadly. He sent a small glare at the other table, causing the ladies there to look away once again. Are those ladies looking at us? Eri asked nervously, having also noticed the stares. Are they angry with us? No, they're just looking at me, Eri, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 assured her sister, a sad smile across her face. A lot of people look at me like that, thanks to my green skin. Even from my parents. Like I said, I'm used to it, so don't worry. Unable and unwilling to ignore the sad look across 𝗧𝗵𝗲's face, Izuku reached over and patted the girl's head. That caused her to flinch a little and look up in surprise. Izuku, if you want, we can take our food and leave, the teen offered. You don't have to stay here if the looks are making you uncomfortable. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 looked shocked at the offer. Really? But I don't want to ruin the out. You wouldn't. Eri spoke up, her voice a bit stronger than usual. I don't want to be at a place that makes you feel sad, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. So if those ladies are making you feel bad, then we can leave. Eri, Izuku. The green girl couldn't help but tear up at the comfort given to her by her new siblings. Thank you. Really, the two of you are the best siblings a girl can ask for. But I'll be okay. Honest, we can just ignore those women and finish our ice cream together. Izuku stared at her for a moment, looking for any falseness in what she said. But the teary, yet sincere smile from her was enough to get him to relax and sit back in his chair, offering a comforting smile back to his second sister. As they continued to eat, the teen found himself withholding a sigh. Even in a world filled with various quirks, discrimination is still a factor in life. If it isn't against someone quirkless like he is, it would be against someone with a mutation-type quirk. It was disheartening to see something like that happen, especially against his new sister. He clenched his free hand under the table. He'll just have to do his best to ensure 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and Eri have a better childhood than his own. Soon, the three finished up their treat and were preparing to leave. As they got up, however, Izuku noticed something at the cashier counter. A cute brunette girl with rosy cheeks was at the front, an anxious look across her face, and judging from the coins she's counting in her hand, she's short on yen. Without much thought, and promising his sisters that he'll be back quickly, he headed over to the counter and the cute girl. Dang it, I'm short 150 yen. The girl mumbled in dismay. With a sigh of recognition, she looked to be prepared to change her order. I have a few extra coins if you need it. Before she could, however, Izuku went up beside her and offered said coins, enough to make up the difference. Hey, the girl twisted her head towards him, not expecting the out-of-nowhere offer. Oh, you don't need to do that. It's fine. I already had my ice cream, so this is just leftover money, Izuku assured her, placing the money on the counter. Take it, so you can get the order you want. The girl still seemed a bit reluctant to take the offered money. However, with some hesitancy, she took the yens. Thank you. It was nothing. Glad I was able to help out, Izuku said happily, a bright smile across his face. Enjoy your ice cream. With that, he headed back to Eri and 𝗧𝗵𝗲, not noticing the girl's rosy cheeks turning a shade darker. It wasn't until they were far enough away from the store that Izuku registered what exactly he did there. I talked to a girl. The boy muttered to himself, face covered, head steaming, and embarrassment practically oozing from every syllable. I just went up there like it was nothing, and talked to a girl for the first time in my life. How? Why? What? While Izuku was hiding from the world with the bags of clothes, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and Eri were walking a few steps in front of him. Today was so much fun. The green girl cheered, pumping a fist up. We got new clothes, visited Izuku's and I meeting place, went to an ice cream shop. Definitely one of the best days ever. 𝗧𝗵𝗶 turned her attention to Eri. What about you, Eri? Was today one of the best? Eri nodded. Today was fun, she said, in her usual quiet manner. 𝗧𝗵𝗶 inspected her for a moment before pouting a bit. Still no smile? Sorry. Don't be. Still have plenty of days to get you smiling, 𝗧𝗵𝗶 assured, wrapping an arm around one of Eri's. We'll get that mouth to flip around, I swear. 𝗧𝗵𝗶 gave her a closed-eyes smile, and because of it, she missed the smallest twitch of Eri's mouth before it settled back to her usual expression. Behind them, Izuku finally managed to settle down and witnessed the little interaction between the two. I'm really glad to have adopted 𝗧𝗵𝗶, he thought to himself, smiling softly. Eri needed a friend, and 𝗧𝗵𝗶 is as happy as she can possibly be. It made any worries about caring for two little girls fade to the background. Oh, Izuku, you stopped mumbling and hiding your face, 𝗧𝗵𝗶 noticed, turning her head to face the teen. Are you okay? You're not broken anymore. A bit of that red came back across his cheeks at the reminder of his semi-catatonic state. I am okay. Don't worry. All conversation ground to a halt when the wall a few feet in front of them exploded. Screams of shock and fear left Eri's and 𝗧𝗵𝗶's mouth as a red beam launched from the destroyed wall and hit the other side of the street. Immediately, Izuku got in front of Eri and 𝗧𝗵𝗶, incredibly tense and nervous. Is it a villain attack? Did we just walk into a villain attack? Are there any heroes around? If not, then hello. Is anyone out there? A very young voice shouted from inside the destroyed building. Help me, somebody, please help. The sound of someone calling for help, of someone in trouble, caused the quirkless teen to immediately spring into action. Stay behind me, you two, he ordered his sisters, moving to the hole that was made. When he looked inside, he saw a small child, tied up at the far end of the building. Again, was the thought that couldn't help but enter his mind. Another child in trouble, and were they the one who blew up the wall? How is he ending up in these situations? Someone, anyone, please help. He heard the child, likely a girl, cry out desperately. Save me, please. He pushed his current thoughts away for the time being. Seeing no heroes in the area, and no one heading to the wall, the quirkless teen made a decision. Stay behind this wall. Don't move until I come back, Izuku instructed 𝗧𝗵𝗶 and Eri, both of whom looked more than a little scared. And remember, if a stranger tries to come and grab you, rip off my glove and grab their face until they pass out. 𝗧𝗵𝗶 finished, clenching her fist nervously but determinedly. Izuku nodded. That's right. Now, stay here. I'll be back. With that, the teen ran to the hole and headed to where the tied-up child was. When he got close, he saw that the child was a red-headed little girl, and that said girl was shaking very badly, with tears streaming down her closed eyes. Are you okay? You're not hurt anywhere, are you? Izuku asked urgently, kneeling down at the girl's level. He moved to try and untie the rope wrapped around her. Stay still, I'm gonna get you out of these. The girl looked surprised, hopeful even, the moment he spoke. However, the look of shock quickly left her, and she shook her head in a panic. Forget it. Grab me and run, before they get here. Before Izuku said, asked, or did anything in response. He heard a door burst open from the other side of the room. When he twisted himself around, he was met with 3 intimidating-looking men, all of whom had at least semi-formal-looking clothing. Looks like the little brat was trying to pull a fast one on us. The one on the right growled, Kid, you better step away from the girl or you'll regret it. Yeah. This is becoming a fairly concerning pattern, one Midoriya Izuku realized. During the tense standoff between Izuku and the 3 men, there were several things the quirkless teen deduced. 1. He's without his camouflage hoodie, magnetic gloves, or air boots. 2. Even if he did have those things, none of them would have prepared him for a confrontation like this. 3. Not only did he have the girl behind him to worry about, but also his 2 sisters hidden right outside. And 4. He has no idea what these guys' quirks are, nor how skilled they are with them. Not even their physical features give them any hints, with all of them looking relatively normal. So yeah, this situation was looking unfavorable in Izuku's eyes. The only advantage he had was the tranquilizer clipped to his pants, which was hidden from the eyes of these men. Boy, didn't you hear me? The one who spoke first growled, his nails suddenly growing into sharp claws. I said step away from the girl, or you regret it. Well, at least he got an idea as to what one of these guys' quirks are. Why you think a pair of pointy nails will scare me? Izuku retorted with false bravado, prodding for more info. A strong burst of wind then flew by his head, hitting the wall behind him. It took much willpower not to flinch from that display of power. How about that, then? The middle guy, perhaps the leader, said in response, a cocky smirk across his face as he held his hand out. Trust me, kid, you don't want to play hero here. All right, that's 2 of them, Izuku thought with a bit more self-assurance. Just 1 more to go. What about you? Izuku then prodded the guy on the left, hoping this guy is dumb as his partners. "G gonna hide behind your friends." With a growl, the third man transformed his hands into stone. "Kid, you better spare us the bravado and hand us the girl." And that's 3. 2 transformation quirks, likely minor ones, and 1 emitter quirk. He could work with this. He can do this. First thing first, take down the one with the emitter quirk. "And if I say no?" Izuku questioned, taking a fighting stance and subtly moving a hand towards the dart gun. "You're outnumbered 3-1, kid. Don't act like yo." In a swift motion that surprised the teen himself, Izuku grabbed the gun and shot at the monologuing middle guy. Said guy cried out in shock and pain as he grabbed a hold of his neck. Before pulling off the dart, he stared at it for a moment before swaying a little and then collapsing on the ground. "You brat," the claw guy roared before charging at him, one hand raised in a swiping motion. Utilizing what knowledge he was able to maintain about martial arts, Izuku planted his feet on the ground before dodging his swipe. He then used one hand to grab the outreached arm and the other to reach for the chest area, and used the momentum of the swipe to lift and slam the villain straight to the ground. He was rewarded with another shout of pain. The claw quirk user at least momentarily immobilized. 2 down, 1 to just as he turned to his head. He was face to face with the stone hand quirk user, one of those stands cocked back for a punch. Izuku wasn't sure how he was able to do the next part, or even how he was able to throw the previous guy on his first try. But the Quirkless sidestepped the rather sloppy punch before grabbing the arm and kicking the stone user's leg from under him. Once again utilizing the motions, he body slammed the final criminal. And with instincts he didn't know he had, he punched the guy straight in the nose, further stunning him. The teen didn't waste any time or think about what he just did. Knowing his time was limited, he reached over to the tied-up girl and lifted her up in her arms. "Don't worry, we're gonna get out of you," Izuku reassured the girl, who still had her eyes firmly shut. He then called out to his sisters, "𝗲𝗵𝗃, be ready too." He was forced to cut himself off and dodged another swipe, rolling forward towards the hole. He twisted around to see the claw quirk user up and growling, albeit his movement unsteady. "If you think I'll let you get away, you got another thing." The villain growled. Those growls were cut off when the girls opened her eyes and launched that very red beam that destroyed the wall. That beam hit the claw quirk user straight on, launching on him straight into the wall behind him and digging him in there, eliciting further screams of agony. Thankfully, the beam was stopped shortly after, the girl closing her eyes shut yet again to stop the blast. For a moment, Izuku was stunned, staring dumbfoundedly at the groaning criminal stuck in the wall. But he quickly shook off his stupor, knowing that he can't waste too much time. Run now, learn about Quirk later. So with that mindset, he finally got out of the building. 𝗲𝗵𝗃, grab onto me. 40 so, good news. After some time running with 𝗲𝗃 and the kidnapped girl in his arms, and 𝗧𝗵𝗃 on his back, they were able to find help. 2 heroes, 𝗵𝗲𝗄 Woods and Death-Arms, were around the area, and after some explaining, they escorted the 4 of them to the police station, as well as went to apprehend the downed kidnappers. Bad news was that, after getting to the police station and giving accounts as to what happened, the girl revealed how she ended up there. My father, he gave me to those guys," Haruka revealed, tears at the edge of her eyes. "Ever since I got my quirk, I keep destroying parts of the house. I even hurt others. I could never control it, and would always hit something by accident. I try to keep my eyes closed, but I sometimes open them by accident. So he wanted to get rid of me. He gave me to those guys so he could get money to fix the house." It was yet again another case of abuse, and it was starting to make Izuku's blood boil. What is wrong with these parents? Giving your child to the Yakuza, throwing one out on the streets, selling your daughter for quick money. Why couldn't any of them actually take care of their children? At the very least, take them to a proper orphanage if they were unable to draw any affection for their own blood. And of course, that case of abuse will leave the question of where Haruka will stay. A question that gave Izuku a vague feeling of dread. But for the moment, he didn't focus on the cause of that dread. His focus was on the currently rattled child in his lap, with his 2 adopted sisters sitting beside him. The 4 were currently at the waiting room of the police station, having been told to wait for a few more people to talk to them. "Hey, are you doing okay?" Izuku asked Haruka softly, seeing that she's been silent for a while. Absent-mindedly, he noticed that she was wearing a pair of red pants and a gray shirt with red long sleeves. "Why yeah." Haruka nodded into his clothes, her face pressed against his chest. Thank you so much for saving me." In response, Izuku patted her hair soothingly. "It's okay. I'm glad I was there to get you out. And those jerks were angry that you did." The quirkless teen turned to the source of the grumbling, which was an angrily pouting 𝗧𝗵𝗃. "They acted like you did something wrong by rescuing her." Izuku's face fell a little at that, memories of that moment surfacing. Before being escorted to the station, 𝗵𝗲𝗄 Woods and Death-Arms had made it clear that they thought what Izuku did was irresponsible and reckless, that he shouldn't have tried to enter into a situation that required a hero. "You did what? That was completely reckless, kid." You shouldn't jump into something like that. It didn't change his decision at that time, and Izuku had no regret running into the hole to save Haruka. Still, it was disheartening to hear two heroes admonish him for trying to help someone, but shook off the feeling, mentally reminding himself to talk to Tifa later. He'd rather not have her view on heroes be affected by this. If you weren't there, if you didn't jump in and save me, Haruka whimpered, clinging onto him tighter. 𝐬𝐻𝐻. Izuku shushed her softly, continuing to pat her head soothingly. Don't think about that. What's important is that you're safe and away from them. Look at you. Being a natural with kids, Izuku felt his spine straighten up, facing paling slightly, and chills going through his body. Slowly, he turned his head to see a familiar black-haired agent giving him a Cheshire grin. Izuku, you got quite the luck, kid. No, 40 so, let's get straight to the point. No, as you probably already know, the kid's quirk is very powerful. No, and uncontrollable. It's called I-beam, which lets her shoot very powerful red beams from her eyes. MS, Kimura. Drawback being, she can't control it. Like at all. Every time she opens her eyes, those lasers will shoot right out. I can't just. So, seeing she's classified as an OPC, I need you to adopt her. I already have 2 kids, Izuku shouted, gripping his hair in frustration. The two were in one of the offices, having the discussion in private. I can't just add another one just like that. There's gotta be someone else that can take care of her, right? Oh, come on. You mean to tell me you can easily separate from little Haruka? Kimura asked in mock disappointment, after seeing how attached she is to you already. Izuku groaned, covering his face with his hands. That was hard to deny, especially when Haruka stubbornly refused to let go of him. It took a lot of coaxing in order for her to let them talk in private, with Eri and Tifa providing her company and physical comfort. Besides that, it's not up to me. Izuku continued. My mom will be the main guardian, not me. Not anymore, Kimura sang smugly. Made it to where the age to adopt OPCs is around your age and over, so no having to drag your mom to do this. Are you expecting me to just bump into OPCs now? Izuku asked incredulously. And that sounds very illegal. Maybe, but hey, the government does shady stuff all the time. Besides, they don't really pay attention to our branch all that much, so there's a lot we can get away with, Kimura said with a shrug. With another groan, Izuku slammed his head onto the table. Is this gonna be a pattern? He runs into an overpowered child, saves them from villains, and ends up adopting them. Cause this is gonna make his life, along with mom's life, a lot more complicated, and that's not getting into the fact that their apartment has only so much room. In all seriousness, I definitely do need to get Haruka adopted as soon as possible. The agent continued, adopting a more serious look. With a quirk like hers, she'll definitely catch the eyes of certain people that would want to use her rather than care for her. That caused Izuku to straighten up, confusion and wariness coming across his face. What? Quirks like Haruka are great for hero work, or just combat in general. Likely the reason she was being sold, Kimura explained. If the wrong person takes notice of her, they'll take her to be groomed for hero work or such. And I don't think you want a child to be forced into that life. Izuku could not disagree. While he loves heroes and is aiming to become one himself, that doesn't mean he's okay with a child being forced and groomed for the role. It should be up to each individual person where they want to go in life. And this isn't so that you can avoid doing another bout of paperwork. Still, the quirkless teen couldn't help but ask that. Can't say that it won't be a bonus for me. If it weren't the sunglasses, Izuku was sure he would see the agent's eyes shifting suspiciously. Izuku bit back another groan, merely emitting a sigh. Leaving Haruka's fate up to the wind is out of the question, that's for sure. He wouldn't be able to live with himself if she ended up in the wrong hands, and forced into a life she may not like. However, before he agreed to anything, he pulled out his phone. And calling my mom. Fine, the agent conceded with a sigh. A few seconds later, his mom picked up. Hello, is something wrong, Izuku? Nothing terrible, but Izuku started off, hesitant. I kinda ran into another child. Huh, was the baffled response of 𝐭. Are you and the girls okay? Is the child okay? Did you run into more villains? We're all okay, Mom. And we did, but they're taken care of, Izuku quickly assured her, omitting a few facts for the time being. But, Agent Kimura is pushing for me to adopt her. Even made it to where I can sign the papers myself. Is she pressuring you to do this? Izuku could hear the threatening tone in his mother's voice. A little, the teen admitted, unwilling to lie to his mom about it. But the thing is, Haruka's, the girl I rescued, quirk is not only powerful, but more combat-oriented. If she doesn't get adopted soon, she might get the eyes of someone who want to use her. And do you want to take her in, Izuku? 𝐭 cut her son off gently. I do. I want to help her, Izuku admitted, but then quickly continued. But I know that 3 kids are already a handful, and we only have so much room in our apartment, and… Izuku, again, the mother cut her son off gently, prompting him to be silent. I trust you, dear, and if you think you can handle another child, do so. After all, while I do as much as I can to help, you'll be their main caretaker. Why? Why leave these decisions to me? He couldn't help but ask yet again. I know you said that you trust me, but Izuku, I've seen you with Eri and Taifa, seen how happy you are taking care of them, how much your eyes lit up when you're around them. 𝐭 explained. You love taking care of these children, Izuku, and I don't want to get in the way of that. Mom, the quirkless teen found himself, yet again, tearing up. All I ever wanted was your happiness, Izuku. And if giving a home for these kids is what makes you happy, then do so. While he couldn't see it, Izuku could imagine his mother smiling from where she was at. And while I caution you to think about you and those kids' future, like I said, I trust that you're mature enough to do that. Besides, with the checks sent to us, we can easily afford to get a bigger home if we need to. With a sniffle, Izuku wiped the tear that managed to trail down one eye. Thank you, Mom. I love you. I love you too, sweetie. With that, the call ended, and Izuku took the time to take some deep breaths, composing himself. After composing himself, the teen put his attention back on Agent 𝗵𝗲, who was silent for the entire call. During that call, she seemed to have pulled the adoption papers, to which she slid in front of him. Sue, Izuku sighed, before grabbing the pen that came with the papers. I'll adopt her. Yes, another one bites the dust. 𝗵𝗲 cheered as Izuku signed the forms. Once her deadbeat dad gets thrown into a cell, full custody will be handed to you. At least she takes her job seriously enough to do it sufficiently. The teen thought, holding back another sigh. And hey, if you need a recommendation, let me know. 𝗵𝗲 offered, surprising Izuku. I know a few places that would be good for the future. That's surprisingly generous of you. While this was only the third time he met her, laziness was the strongest impression he got of the agent, so he wouldn't have expected any offer that would require work on her part. Hey, you saved me a lot of work by adopting 3 kids in a row, the agent said casually, folding her arms together. Friends like that I tend to keep in touch with and help out, especially if there are OPCs I can give them. You're not planning to hand me OPCs in the future, are you? Anyway, let's talk about a few materials needed for her quirk. Yes, Izuku realized with some dread. Yes, she is. 40, we have a new sister now. After finishing his talk with Agent 𝗵𝗲, Izuku headed back to the waiting room to rejoin the 3 girls and inform them of the adoption. The 3 were currently in the seats he previously saw, with Haruka at the middle while Eri and Taifa were at her left and right, both holding onto her hands. Yes, Izuku nodded to Taifa, who made the exclamation, before focusing on Haruka. If you like Haruka, I can take care of you from now on. The news seemed to have taken the girl too much by surprise, because the second he finished his last sentence, she opened her eyes in shock. 𝐻𝗧𝗧. It was only thanks to quick reaction time that he wasn't blasted into the wall or bisected. The quirkless teen threw himself on the floor, while the beam hit the wall behind him. Both Eri and Taifa screamed, the 2 falling off their chairs in their surprise. That drew a lot of screams and shouts, with some officers even rushing into the area. Thankfully, 𝗵𝗲 was still there, and she quickly went to calm things down. All right, calm down everyone. This isn't a villain attack. We just have an OPC that lost control of her quirk for a moment. Everything's okay, all right. Meanwhile, Haruka quickly closed her eyes tightly yet again, with the girl rambling out apologies. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I swear, it was an accident and Haruka. Haruka, breathe. Shaking off the rattleness, Izuku went up to the distraught girl and held by the shoulders. Breathe in, breathe out, okay. Breathe in, breathe out. Slowly, the I-beam wielder did as he said, taking in some deep breaths. After a moment, she was less rattled, but still fairly distraught. I am sorry. Please, don't change your mind. I promise, I'll do better. Haruka. Izuku cut her off, trying to sound both firm and gentle. I'm not gonna change my mind. You can still live with us if you want. Really. Haruka stuttered, sounding both fearful and hopeful. Promise, the teen assured her, smiling, despite the fact that she can't see. And you don't have to worry about your eyes anymore. The lady I was talking with is gonna give us something so you can control your quirk. Once again, the girl was taken for a shock. This time, thankfully, she kept her eyes closed. I'll be able to see again, she asked, her voice sounding smaller than before. I won't blow stuff up anymore. Izuku felt his heart break at the sorrowful, guilt-ridden look across her face, so gently he wrapped her in a hug. You'll be able to see again, he stated, his tone more soft now. And you won't blow anything else up by accident. I promise. He heard a choke sob coming from the girl, before returning the hug and burying her head into his shoulder. Thank you, she sobbed out. Thank you. Izuku kept silent this time, merely comforting the girl as much as he could. From the corner of both eyes, he saw both Eri and Taifa looking at Haruka with sorrowful empathy. Never did he expect to not only save 3 little girls from abuse and villainy, but also adopt them into his family. But honestly, there's no regret with those choices, and if given the option, he would do the same things all over again. The new everyday you can open your eyes now, Haruka. But, Mr. Izuku, why you're still in front, don't worry. I'll be fine. I don't want to hurt you. Please, move. Trust me. These'll work. Do you promise? I promise. Trust me, I don't want to be hurt, just as much as you don't want to hurt me. Oh, okay. Slowly, hesitantly, Haruka opened her eyes, and what she was met with was the smiling face of her savior. For a moment, she merely stared, her eyes now fully opened. Then she looked at her hands. Then around the living room they were in, she saw two girls, about the same age as her, Eri and Tifa. She saw a TV. She saw the couch they were on. All of it was red, but none of it was exploding. I can see, Haruka muttered, all clear in her voice. I can actually see. A huge smile broke through her face. Sure, everything was red, but that beats everything exploding. My eyes are open, and nothing is exploding. No one is getting hit with my lasers. Congratulations. She was suddenly glomped on by one of the girls sitting by her. Tifa, if she remembered right. I'm so happy for you, sis. Sister. She has a sister now. 2 new sisters. A new family. One that accepted her and helped her. These glasses will keep your quirk under control from now on. Her savior, Izuku, spoke up, getting her attention back on him. They're made to stick to your head and not easily fall off, so you don't have to worry about accidents happening so easily. Plus, they're made to be very tough, so no worries over breaking them either. The glasses created for Haruka were a pair of narrow-shaped red visors, with a black frame holding the narrow lenses. From what he gathered, not only do these visors have quirk suppression tech that keeps her lasers back, but can also control the strength of her quirk. With a press of the button, the lasers can shoot through the lenses, with the lenses acting as a dampener, and the strength of those lenses can increase, decrease by a twist of the small knob across the rim. Izuku have mixed feelings about the fact that these visors were designed for combat. Considering the fact that quirk use without a license was illegal, along with a sinking suspicion that someone was subtly pushing Haruka to hero work. However, he knew that she would need to train with her quirk, and these visors would significantly help with such training. Plus, if Haruka ever finds herself in a place where she would need to use her work, this'll make it more doable. Thus, the quirkless teen had a few spare ones in hand, in case Haruka's current pair gets broken or lost. Not likely, but adopting 3 OPCs in under 2 months was even more unlikely, so it wouldn't hurt. Haruka remained silent, staring at the teen intensely beneath her new lenses. The silence caused Izuku to have a small, worried frown. Haruka, are you This time, the small redhead glomped on him, startling him and causing the teen to fall on his butt. Thank you, she said with as much sincereness as possible, her voice muffled from his shirt. Thank you, for saving me, for taking me in, for these glasses. Izuku's startled look turned into a softer-looking one, with him returning the hug. It's no problem, he told her, smiling. Welcome to the family, Haruka. Family. This was her new family now. That fact filled Haruka with a happiness that was almost overwhelming. A feeling she hopes remains for a long time. 40. The adoption of 3 OPCs changed Izuku's daily life by a lot. For one, he's getting up much earlier. It was so that he could find time to exercise, continue cleaning up the beach, and learn and practice whatever martial art he can discover. All this right before making breakfast for his adopted sisters. He also took to homeschooling the 3. Due to all the trauma the 3 developed from their past abuse, none of them were inclined to leave his side anytime soon. And Izuku wasn't sure if it would be the wisest idea to have overpowered children be supervised by regular teachers, at least for the time being. He wants them all to have normal, that's for certain. But he can't ignore that they all have uncontrollable quirks, and that can cause a lot of trouble for whoever's watching them. He took to studying up on quirk counseling. But considering that analyzing quirks was practically a part of him at this point, it wasn't really that much of a change. Only difference was that his analysis was now being put to use. Finally, and just overall, much of his time was spent with his 3 sisters. Come on, Haru, you can do it. Win. Tifa cheered from the far end side of the couch. I'm trying my best here. Haruka growled beside her, frantically pushing the various buttons on her controller. Izuku merely chuckled, pressing the buttons on his controller at a more controlled pace. Beside him, and at the other end of the couch, was Eri, who was silently watching the game he and Haruka were playing together. As for what they're playing, Heroic Combat 2, a fighting game filled with several pro heroes, both new and old, from 𝐒𝐭𝐲𝐽𝑠 to Best Jeanist to even All Might. One of Izuku's favorite games to play, and one he spent hours playing whenever he got the chance. However, with his recommitment to becoming a hero, along with Eri and Tifa coming into his life, it was a while since he last played it. However, Haruka saw his console and the games beside it, and almost instantly became eager to play, which led to where they were now, with Izuku playing as 𝐻𝗏 while Haruka chose Endeavor. KO. And with one final finishing move from 𝐻𝗏, Endeavor was defeated. Another lost. Haruka growled childishly, crossing her arms with a huff. You're way too good at this game. 𝐒𝐭𝐴. Well, I have been playing this for a while. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 replied with another small laugh. Honestly, he would go easy on her, and at least give her a few wins, but when he tried one time, Haruka noticed, and was adamant that he doesn't hold back on her. She wanted to face him, and beat him at his best. Hey, you're getting better, Haru. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 reassured the laser user, hugging her from the side. First few times, you couldn't even get a hit in. You were able to get some of his health down this time. Yeah, Haruka conceded, despite still looking pouty at her loss. A moment later, she shook her head and straightened up, her eyes likely glinting in determination beneath her lenses. Another round. Won't stop till I get better and get a win. Her determination earned a smile from the Quirkless teen, a small proud one. All right. He then clicked out of the post-fight screen and back to the character loadout. With determination like that, you'll definitely get better at anything you do, Haruka. With his focus on the screen, he missed the small blush from the young girl, as well as the little smile that sprouted. However, she quickly shook off any embarrassment and focused her visor back on the screen. The two continued playing for a bit, with 𝗧𝗵𝗲 cheering Haruka on while Eri silently watched throughout. Idly, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 made a mental note to buy a few more controllers, so that everyone can have the chance to play. While 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and Eri haven't expressed any interest in playing as of yet, it wouldn't hurt to give the option later in the future. Eventually, after another round, he decided to end it there. Alright, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 placed the controller down before getting up and stretching. I'm gonna stop for today. You can continue playing with each other if you want. Already? Haruka questioned, a small pout of disappointment across her face. The Quirkless teen smiled apologetically at her. There's a few things that I need to get done before it's time for bed. We can play more tomorrow if you want. Don't worry. We can play together if we want. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 offered, grabbing the controller with a bright smile. I can help you practice so you can beat 𝗧𝗵𝗲 next time. That seemed to sober up Haruka. The crimson redhead gave an accepting nod before aiming a fiery look at 𝗧𝗵𝗲 beneath her lenses. Tomorrow, you better prepare for a rematch. Understand? I will, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 assured her, patting the girl's head. And I look forward to seeing how you improve. With that, he headed to his room, leaving the three girls to play with one another. 40 That's so cool. Haruka squealed, her visors getting noticeably brighter. Beside her, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 gave a rapid nod of agreement while Eri was merely staring in amazement. The thing that got their undivided attention was 𝗧𝗵𝗲, up atop one of the piles of junk at 𝗣𝗵𝗿𝗺, his magnetic gloves keeping him up there. What brought the four at 𝗣𝗵𝗿𝗺? A request made by Haruka when his support gear was brought up by 𝗧𝗵𝗲 during breakfast. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 has his own hero gear. Haruka exclaimed in shock, standing up from her seat. Haruka, sit down please. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 ordered her, his tone a bit firm. Sorry. Sheepishly, the redhead sat back down before quickly getting back to topic. But do you really have hero gear, 𝗧𝗵𝗲? Yeah. His stern look was now replaced with a more bashful one, a blush adorning his cheeks. Kinda made them all myself. Why didn't you use them on the bad guys that had me? I didn't have them at that time. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 explained sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. He definitely plans on keeping his gear on his person 24/7 from now on. Sure, none of the support gear probably wouldn't have helped in that situation, but better to have it and not need it, than to need it and not have it, as the old saying goes. One of those gears is a pair of gloves that can stick to things. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, the one who spoke of the support gear, mentioned excitingly. Also boots that can boost him high in the air. And Eri, you mentioned that his hoodie can make him invisible, right? Yes, Eri confirmed with a small nod. Brief glows from Haruka's visors gave a clear tell of the girl's excitement. Can I see them? She asked 𝗧𝗵𝗲 eagerly. Please? Despite his embarrassment, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 couldn't help but smile in amusement and fondness. Later in the day, okay. That led to where they were now, with the teen showing off his support gear to his three sisters. You should have seen him move around with it, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 told Haruka excitedly. He was like a ninja, hopping from one pile to the next, hiding from the bad guys. That sounds so awesome, Haruka whispered in amazement, imagining that scenario. The Quirkless teen then hopped down from the pile, landing in front of the girls. And here are my boots. With a few clicks of a button, I can jump high in the sky. Tapping a few things on the monitor, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 bent down slightly before jumping up, sailing 3 feet in the air. He did a backward flip. Before landing, knees bent and one hand on the ground to steady himself. His little trick earned him more vocal amazement from his sisters. And you really made all of them yourself, 𝗧𝗵𝗲? Haruka questioned. Like I said, kinda, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 replied, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. All the gear I managed to build came from here, at the beach. Whenever I can, I sometimes come across thrown away gear and fix them up. You build all your gear from this beach? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 spoke in surprise, looking around the junk-filled beach. You didn't tell me that. Only that you are cleaning up the beach. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 gave an apologetic look in response. Sorry, I guess it slipped my mind. Does that mean you plan on becoming a hero, 𝗧𝗵𝗲? Haruka asked, eyebrows furrowed as she put the dots together. Is that why you're exercising by cleaning up the beach, making hero gear yourself? And is that why you decided to rescue us? To be a hero? Izuku blinked for a moment, surprised she came to that conclusion herself. Granted, it's not terribly difficult to figure out, but for a 7-year-old to make the connections that quickly, it told him that Haruka is a smart one. Why yeah, being a hero. It's always been my dream, ever since I found out about heroes, Izuku confirmed, a small, melancholic smile entering his face. That smile had the girls frowning in concern, all of them recognizing it as a sad-looking smile. But why is it sad? Why does their brother look sad when he's talking about his dream? Is there something wrong with it? But that doesn't make sense. Being a hero should be an amazing thing, right? Is he worried that he could be like those jerks? Taifa thought, remembering the 2 heroes that scolded Izuku. But Izuku would never become like them. He's too nice to scold anyone for saving others. Though I didn't save you 3 because I wanted to be a hero. Or at least, that's only part of it, the quirkless teen corrected, drawing the girls out of their thoughts. He kneeled down as he gave them a warmer smile. I did that because all of you needed help. I couldn't just leave any of you alone. His words touched his 3 sisters hard, with each of them tearing up in varied emotions. And Taifa, the most open and affectionate of the 3, did not hesitate to jump to her brother. Izuku, she wailed out. The teen caught her effortlessly, with the green girl wrapping her arms around him and burying her face in her shoulder, Midoriya-level tears pouring out. Is this what Mom and I look like to others? Izuku idly wondered. Haruka and Eri joined the group hug soon after, both being careful not to touch Taifa's skin. The rewinder dug into his other shoulder, her tears silently streaming, and Haruka was at the middle, head laid above his chest and the tears beneath her visors barely held back. You're gonna be a great hero, Haruka stated confidently, her small grip on him tightening. One of the best. I know it. MHM. Both Eri and Taifa nodded their heads in agreement, their heads not leaving his shoulders. That declaration, along with the agreements to it, caused Izuku to tear up. Thank you, he said sincerely, his voice cracking slightly. It means a lot that you think I can do it. And he meant it. In a world that thinks he can't become one, it means a lot when there are those who say otherwise. Still, a small, timid part of his mind, one created by this very world, couldn't help but wonder, would they, Haruka and Taifa, still say the same if they knew he's quirkless? 40 SSSHHH. It's okay. You're home. You're not with Overhaul anymore. Izuku shushed the crying Eri softly, as the girl shook in his arms. The 2 were at his bed, the day long over, and in their pajamas. Both have been previously asleep when a nightmare woke Eri up. One where she was back at 𝐲𝗵𝗲 Yakuza base, being torn up and put back together by Overhaul. It's a nightmare the rewinder has from time to time, fearing that this was all a dream and that she's still under the custody of Overhaul. At first, they appeared often, which was one of the reasons she often slept with Izuku. But they thankfully decreased as time passed, especially when Taifa came into their lives. Unfortunately, there are still times where those nightmares do appear, hence why Izuku was comforting her now. He said that you would never rescue me. Eri whimpered, her grip on him tightening. That he would hurt you, like he hurt me if you tried. He's wrong, Izuku said softly, yet firmly, patting her hair to soothe her. You are saved, you are here and safe, and Overhaul won't be able to hurt anyone anymore. It took a bit more time, but eventually, Izuku was able to soothe her, at least enough to where the 2 can sleep. The 2 then laid down onto bed, blanket covering them and both ready to go back to sleep. Izuku. But before they could, Eri decided to speak up, a question pressing on her mind. Why did you look sad when you talked about being a hero? The teen stiffened, having not expected that question. It's honestly a reminder of how observant kids can be, memories from his own childhood passing through his head. However, he didn't stay stiff for long, and relaxed some. He already told Eri much of his past, from his quirklessness to the bullying he went through. They would simply be an add-on to what she knew. It was one of the reasons I was bullied, he told her softly, his eyes aimed at the space above her head. Because I'm quirkless, people don't believe I can be a hero. So people my age would laugh and mock me, sometimes even hurt me. I've been told countless times that I couldn't be a hero, not without a quirk. They hurt you for wanting to be a hero, for wanting to save people, Eri questioned, a mix of confusion and sorrow in her tone. It's like I said before, many see quirkless people as useless, Izuku said sadly, patting the top of her head. So for a quirkless boy to want to be a hero, to be something that's known for their strength, some can't help but laugh. And that's why you look sad talking about being a hero, Eri concluded, tearing up. Cause it reminds you of the times people hurt you and bully you. Izuku stayed silent this time, tears gathering in his own eyes. The silence was enough of an answer for Eri. They're wrong. You're not useless, she refuted, attempting to comfort Izuku like he comforted her. You saved me, saved Taifa, saved Haruka, and heroes are people that save others, right? That means you already are one. 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗿 was all Izuku could say, a tad stunned by her words. Since you saved us from bad guys, that makes you a hero, right? 𝗧𝗏 continued, looking at him with her tear-filled eyes. So they're wrong. They're all wrong. You're our hero. My hero. Her words caused the tears to fall from Izuku's eyes. Thank you, 𝗧𝗏, he choked out, wrapping the girl in a hug, one that she returned as best she could, her own tears falling down. It means a lot that you feel that way. I'm happy to be your hero. You, Tifa, and Haruka. It was honestly something he didn't think about too much. The fact that he's likely a hero to these 3 girls. Much of his focus was on saving them initially, then caring for them later on. But 𝗧𝗏's words reminded him that he did save all 3 of them. He may not be a pro-hero, at least not yet, but for these 3 little girls, he became their hero. Eventually, the 2 of them cried themselves to sleep while still holding on to one another. If anyone were to come in, or if Izuku would have been awake, they would have seen a very small but noticeable smile across 𝗧𝗏's lips. The 4th hatchling, one of the bigger issues when it comes to adopting OPCs would be quirk training. Due to OPC's quirks being very powerful and uncontrollable, training those quirks are a must. However, Japan's laws regarding quirk usage makes it difficult, near impossible, to properly train quirks. At first, it wasn't much of an issue. 𝗧𝗏 could do to her training at home, and there wasn't really any way for Tifa to train with her quirk, so Izuku didn't need to worry about the laws regarding quirk use at first. Haruka, however, became a more complicated story. While her visor made it to where she doesn't have to worry about controlling her lasers, it would still be helpful to practice with her quirk. If she ever decides to hero quirk, or another field of danger, or even just use her quirk for self-defense, she will need to learn how to use her quirk with her visor. Without practice, she could be liable to accidentally blow places apart when attempting to use her quirk, and that's assuming that her lasers won't get stronger as she ages. So yes, training was needed, and that's where the quirk restrictions rear its ugly head. There's almost nowhere for people to use their quirk, let alone train with it, and the places that Haruka could train at are too far away to make daily trips at. That meant they couldn't train with her quirk on a consistent basis, at least not until they get a new home where they can train it. So yeah, Izuku was going through the list of recommendations Kimura gave him at a quick pace. Fortunately, there was one area that I could go to for training, if only on a weekly basis. 𝗧𝗏's Park. And, shoot, Izuku then threw a frisbee, one of several he got nearby, in the air. Said frisbee was then shot by a laser beam, the plastic toy exploding in contact. Another hit. Haruka cheered, pumping her fist. I'm getting better at this. Izuku nodded in agreement, smiling. You are, Haruka. Keep it up, and you'll be able to hit anything. That earned a happy grin, as well as a small blush from the visor wearer. Thanks, Izuku. Right now, the thing they're working on was Haruka's aim, one of the more obvious things to work with. While the focus would be to hit what she's targeting, the more important thing was to not miss and inadvertently hit something else. Her lasers were powerful, and if she ended up hitting the wrong target, it could lead to bad results, to say the least. They'll also work on tuning her visor on and off in quick fashion, so as to stop a long stream from being created. But first, their focus was on her aim. Our turn. Tifa jumped in, readying a frisbee. Let's go, 𝗧𝗏. All right. 𝗧𝗏 also readied a frisbee, looking significantly less excited. The 2 girls then threw their frisbees as far as they could. Of course, with them being kids, those weren't impressive throws. Nevertheless, Haruka shot at both of them as quickly as she could. Unfortunately, while she was able to hit one, she missed the other. Thankfully, the laser hit a solid steel panel rather than anything else. One of the things that made 𝗧𝗏's Park one of the better places to freely use quirks or to train with them was many of the safety features they placed around the park. It's to the point where the area looked more like a hybrid playground, training area, rather than a regular park. Several metal panels scattered across the park to block emitter quirks. Obstacle courses made to be resilient against high-level strength quirks. A large pond in the middle for aquatic mutant quirks. The park was designed for kids with volatile and dangerous quirks, serving as both a place for them to play, as well as a makeshift training area. We're getting better at this, 𝗧𝗏. Rather than being down at their lackluster throw, Tifa looked excited at the progress made. Our frisbees managed to stay airborne for a little longer. 𝗧𝗏 didn't look as excited as her sister about their progress, but Tifa's spirit kept her from being disappointed in herself, so she could only nod in response to her words. I wasn't able to hit both, though. Haruka, meanwhile, could only pout at her own progress. Threat. Don't worry about it. Trying to hit more than one takes time, especially with how your visors work, Izuku assured her. Not to mention 𝗧𝗏 and Tifa's throws probably threw off her aim, but it's best not to mention that. Keep at it, and you'll do better. Haruka nodded her head firmly, a cute look of determination entering her face. She's definitely gonna get better with her quirk. Count on it. So much of the time at the park was spent doing this little game. Izuku, 𝗧𝗏, and 𝗧𝗵𝗶 would throw frisbees up in the air, with Haruka making attempts to shoot them down. While she didn't hit every target, there was noticeable improvement from where she started, faster than Izuku expected. It's clear that the girl was learning from her missed shots and making actual moves to improve. It's another showing of how smart the girl really was. Eventually, the little training session ended, with Haruka able to hit a decent portion of the frisbee. The majority she didn't hit. Izuku and his sisters moved to gather them all up. The frisbees scattered all across the area they were in. Once we find a suitable house, Haruka should be able to make much faster progress. Izuku mused to him as he dropped frisbees into the sack he had carried with him. Tightho's park is nice, but only coming here on a weekly basis will stump her progress. Hey, Izuku. The teen was brought out of his thoughts by an eager-looking 𝗧𝗵𝗶, who held a few frisbees in hand. Once we finish cleaning, are we gonna look around the park? I want to see more of it. At that, Izuku smiled warmly at her. Of course, I promised that we would, didn't I? He replied back, patting her head. That earned giggles from the poison-skinned girl. Yeah. Soon after, the young group of 4 were exploring through the park. 𝗧𝗵𝗶 was at the front of the group, the most eager of the 4, while Haruka was right behind her. Izuku was trailing behind both, with Eri sticking close to him. So pretty, 𝗧𝗵𝗶 said with clear wonder, twisting and turning to take in every inch of the park. This park really is super pretty. Silently, Izuku agreed with her. Tightho's really was beautiful. The trees and hills were very lush. The lake was cleaner than any body of water he had seen before, and there were various flowers and other plants that the teen had never seen before. It's clear that the park was not only made for powerful kids to play at, but also for just people in general to enjoy going around as well. Beside him, Eri was also looking around with wonder. With this being the first time she ever went to a park, 𝗧𝗏 was painting a heavy impression on her young mind. It'll make other parks look lacking in comparison in the future. You think so? Haruka, however, was the least enthused out of the 4. A look of disinterest was clear across her face as she looked around the park. Of course, the green girl answered, twisting around to face Haruka. Can't you see how clean the lake is? All the different plants. Even the air feels cleaner. It probably does look beautiful for everyone else. Haruka replied back, looking rather defensive. But all of it is red for me. It's really hard to see anything different. Oh, I forgot about that, 𝗧𝗵𝗶 said, sounding sheepish. Does it bother you any that everything's red? At that question, Haruka relaxed some. Well, not really, no, she admitted. I mean, I spent a long time having to always keep my eyes closed, so being able to open them without destroying things or hurting anyone, even if it's all red, I'm happy that I can see it all now. 𝗧𝗵𝗶 gave her a look of both sympathy and understanding. While she could never imagine having to always keep her eyes closed, unable to enjoy the sights around her, or even live with just seeing one color, she does understand being able to do something you couldn't, despite the drawbacks. The ivy skin girl will always have to keep on her sleeves and gloves, and be extra careful with skin contact so that she doesn't hurt anybody. But she never lets it bother her, especially when Izuku, Eri, 𝗵𝗏𝗄, and Haruka aren't afraid of her hugging them, even willing to hug back. So yeah, she definitely understands Haruka's point of view. So don't worry about me. I'm fine with exploring the park with you, Eri, and Izuku, Haruka assured her green sister. And we came all the way just so we could train with my quirk. So it's only fair that you can look around. Right. Hearing that, 𝗧𝗵𝗶 couldn't help but smile brightly before moving forward to glomp Haruka yet again. You really are such a cool sis, you know? Hey. Haruka couldn't help but yelp out, startled by the sudden hug. Give me a warning, would ya? Sorry. Despite the apology, the green girl didn't sound all that apologetic. Meanwhile, Izuku merely looked at them with a warm smile across his face. He's happy to see his new siblings get along with one another. It would have been an issue if none of the 3 could stand each other, but thankfully, no butting of heads have sprung up so far. Hopefully, that stays that way and doesn't have to worry about sibling rivalries. Once we're back home, we can play a lot of heroic combat to make you. 𝗧𝗵𝗶 found herself interrupted when something burst through the trees around them and crashed in front of her and Haruka. Both girls let out small cries of shock, with 𝗧𝗵𝗶's hold on Haruka becoming tighter. Get behind me, you two. Immediately, Izuku acted, placing Eri beside the 2 girls and getting in front of all of them, tense and ready for any possible attack. Any seriousness and fear across his face shifted to a look of surprise when he got a look of what's in front of them. Or rather, who? A boy. And a rather large boy at that, who looks to be 10 years old. One with clearly reptilian skin all over his body, spikes protruding his back, and claws across his fingers. He had on clothes akin to the ones 𝗧𝗵𝗶 wore when he first met her, a collar across his neck, and bruises and cuts all across his green scales. Are you kidding me? Was the first thought that immediately sprung into Izuku's mind. One he couldn't help, as this was the 4th child that he ran into that was in some sort of trouble. But once his mind registered the injuries on the kid, his disbelief shifted to concern. "Hey," Izuku called out, relaxing his posture and drawing the boy's attention to him. He was immediately met with wariness and distrust from his yellow-slitted eyes. "Are you all right? What happened?" The moment the quirkless teen took a few steps towards the mutant child, the boy growled and got into all fours in a hostile posture. That put the teen to a halt, holding his hands up cautiously. "Don't worry, I'm not gonna hurt you," Izuku assured him softly. "I just want to check on you, is all." But the boy didn't let himself relax. Seeing this, the girls decided to chip in. "Hey, you don't have to worry. Izuku is really nice," 𝗧𝗵𝗶 encouraged the boy. "He won't hurt you, promise. If you need help, Izuku can help you." Haruka added in support. "He helped all of us when we were in trouble, so he can definitely help you. Izuku, he'll never hurt you." Eri also found herself speaking in support of Izuku and in concern for the boy. "Are you being chased? If so, then you can trust us." The reptile boy continued to remain silent, his eyes moving to each person. When his eyes were aimed at 𝗧𝗵𝗶, something more than distrust shined within them before quickly sharpening once more. However, before any more could be said or done, an adult male voice entered into the area, one that had the boy stiffening up. "Oh, there you are, 𝗓𝗓𝗓. I've been looking all over for you." The boy, now named 𝗓𝗓𝗓, immediately tried to make a run for it. However, exhaustion seemed to have set itself within the reptilian child, causing him to collapse on his stomach. Fear and desperation made itself clear across his face as he attempted to force himself up. Izuku acted immediately and stood in front of the exhausted boy. "Everyone, get behind me," Izuku, once again, ordered urgently. The three girls wasted no time getting behind him and around 𝗓𝗓𝗓, just in time for the man calling out to 𝗓𝗓𝗓 to reveal himself. The man in question looked like a doctor or something from the lab coat he's wearing. Around middle age, or at least close it, with short brown hair and light brown eyes. He also had a smile that lacked any of the warmth of a parent or grandparent. "You shouldn't run off like that. You know I get worried," the man scolded with that same fake warmth, before turning his attention to Izuku. "I'm sorry about my son. He's a rebellious child, so he often runs away from me." Yeah, Izuku didn't believe that story one bit. The lack of warmth was already a big giveaway, but the fact that there's very little show of concern about the boy's current state, and the fear across 𝗓𝗓𝗓's face cemented that this guy was a kidnapper, likely the one who hurt him this badly too. The three girls were just as distrustful, with Haruka bending down to 𝗓𝗓𝗓 to whisper, "Is that really your dad?" And no, that was enough for both Haruka and 𝗧𝗵𝗶 to glare at the likely kidnapper, with Eri merely looking at the whole situation nervously. "He wasn't bothering us at all," Izuku said, not bothering an attempt to hide his distrust. "But he's hurt, really bad. Let me help you get him to a hospital, so no, that won't be necessary at all," the man quickly assured him. "The boy is just clumsy, that's all. I have things that can help with his cuts, so you don't need to worry." Izuku narrowed his eyes. "Even so, it looks like more than a few cuts," he insisted. "He's exhausted and can't get himself up, so it's probably best to don't worry about it." The teen tensed up when the man stepped towards him, towering over him, clearly trying to intimidate him. "I can take care of him, no issue. Now, you best go with your sisters now. Wouldn't want them getting hurt." Izuku felt his blood go cold over the not-so-subtle threat towards his adoptive sisters. With the lack of knowledge of his quirk, and how strong he actually is, he was at a disadvantage. If he tried to fight him, he would put his sisters in danger. Could he really do that? Can he afford to? Slightly, subconsciously, he looked back towards the group of kids, and what he saw was an incredibly scared child, staring fearfully at the man in front of them. Izuku's eyes hardened. That was more than enough. Police station wowie, kid, not even a full month in, and end up rescuing a fourth kid from a mad scientist. "I don't do this on purpose, you know." No, I approve. Keep finding more OPCs, and that'll be less work for us. Please don't encourage vigilantism to teenagers. Once again, Izuku found himself in a police station, and once again, he found himself in front of Agent 𝗵𝗲, who looked a little too pleased. Also with them was Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗏, the officer who spoke with him and Eri on the day he rescued her. This, along with being around for both the 𝗧𝗵𝗶 and Haruka incidents, had inadvertently led to him being the main officer to deal with any Midoriya case that happens. Yes, there's an unofficial name that has formed regarding any case involving him and a child. Izuku had incredibly mixed feelings about that. Well, technically, it's not really vigilantism. To be a vigilante, you have to use your quirk without a hero license to fight criminals, 𝗵𝗲 argued, rather cheekily. And seeing that he doesn't have a quirk to use, he can't break the law. I'm not sure if any court would accept that kind of argument, Izuku thought flatly, while 𝗧𝗵𝗏 merely sighed in exasperation. Regardless, this case can be regarded as self-defense and the defense of a minor, 𝗧𝗵𝗏 admitted, especially since, as Agent 𝗵𝗲 pointed out, there was no usage of quirk. "All that I ask is that you practice more caution in the future. I don't choose for these things to happen," Izuku mentally cried to himself. but he remained silent, knowing the detective was just doing what's required of him. Now, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this meetup, Kimura declared with a Cheshire grin. So, as you can already guess, 𝗔𝗂𝐻 is classified as an OPC. How, you may ask? Well, his quirk is called Peak Reptile, and it basically gives all the traits of reptiles at their prime. With his love of quirks overpowering his exasperation over the entire thing, the quirk, hero fanboy looked at the agent with clear interest. Yep, there's enhanced strength, speed, and agility. The ability to regenerate lost limbs at a fast rate. The agent listed off, counting on her fingers as well. Hardened skin comparable to armor, a high keen sense of smell, the ability to camouflage himself, razor-sharp teeth. Basically, if a reptile has it, so does he. And all those traits are at a level to give even low-level heroes trouble. Incredible. Taking out a notebook from behind him, the quirkless teen quickly jotted all the traits listed off, as well as possible other abilities 𝗔𝗂𝐻 could have. But what about those traits would make him? The downside to all those abilities is the form we're dubbing his predator mode, Kimura then revealed. When he gets too angry, or feels like he's in a lot of danger, his animal instincts kick in and he'll attack anything and everything around him. Even heard that he tried to eat a few people, and with the strength to give even low-level heroes a challenge. That obviously poses a problem. Now he has a better understanding as to what makes him an OPC. However, in the midst of his writing, he paused, a question forming inside his head. But, wait. He looked at the agent and the detective with confusion. If he's really that strong, then how it's due to Dr. Aquino's quirk, suppressor. Tsukachi answered, already knowing the question in Izuku's mind. With any weapon in hand, he's able to suppress anyone's quirk with enough hits. That, along with the quirk-suppressing collar the boy had on, kept him fully able to escape or hide. That caused Izuku to nod in understanding. That would explain it. The scientist, while proficient with the knife he was carrying, was someone he was able to take down easily enough. Having an ability that can suppress or nullify quirks is definitely powerful against most quirk users, especially with how reliant people, heroes are with their quirks. Fortunately enough, that advantage doesn't apply with someone without a quirk. Dr. Aquino isn't 𝗔𝗂𝐻's father, right? So how did he get his hand on him? Izuku asked, rather hesitantly. And what did the doctor want with 𝗔𝗂𝐻, anyway? For his regeneration, Kimura answered casually. Not only did he want to enhance it, but also replicate it. So he adopted the kid, kept him locked and collared in a cage, and performed not-so-child-friendly experiments for about several weeks. A mix of horror and rage boiled within Izuku's stomach. The fact that it was for 𝗔𝗂𝐻's regeneration abilities left a lot to the imagination of what type of experiments were performed. And just thinking of what might have happened made him feel sick. As for how he got adopted, the kid was raised in a shady orphanage for most of his life. The agent continued. The kids picked on him a lot, the keeper didn't like him, and the staff had trouble controlling him, so when given the chance to get rid of him, no thought was given as to who was adopting him. The fact that this wasn't another case of parental abuse provided little to no comfort for the quirkless teenager. Are there any OPCs that aren't getting abused? Izuku couldn't help but exclaim in frustration. Now you have an understanding about how I feel, Kimura said blankly. Anyway, the orphanage will be dealt with, and Dr. Aquino will definitely be behind bars for his child experiments. All that's left is finding a family for dear little 𝗔𝗂𝐻. Just give me the papers already. Izuku, already knowing the drill at this point, merely sighed and went straight to the point. And I don't even need to persuade you this time. With an amused chuckle, the agent pulled out the forms and handed them to Izuku. Managed to find a good house yet? Not yet, though I have made a short list. The green-haired teen answered as he filled out the forms. Should be able to make a decision pretty soon. The fact that pretty much all the recommendations are mansion-size houses further answers his suspicion on Kimura's plans to send him more OPCs. But at this point, there's little room to complain, considering the number of OPCs he's running into is increasing. If this is a pattern that'll continue on, then he would have to prepare for it. For both his own and the kid's sakes, and in the future, he'll be grateful to past self for such preparations. Unknown location Izuku Midoriya. Age 14, soon to be 15. Quirk status, Quirkless. Previously a student of Aldera Junior High, now homeschooled. Have adopted 3, now 4, OPCs, and have plans to relocate to a much bigger residence. Do you really need to list all that information? We both know all that already. It makes me sound professional. Anyways, from what we've seen of him, he's perfect. Not only is he a kind and caring father figure, but also brave and dependable as well. If we can convince him to adopt us, we'll have the parent we always wanted. One that will not only put up with us, but actually care. You'll get no argument here. But what's our plan on getting that to happen? Leave it to me. The first thing we'll need to do is grab his attention. With that, 2 Opus children plan out their own adoption under one Izuku Midoriya, Tithos Park's sister. What is it, Juna? That person, the one fighting that cruel man. Are you referring to the green-haired Mr. Can Can we find him? He was so full of light. Really? Are you sure, Juna? I am. I have never seen someone with that much light in them. I want to be around him more. Then if you're sure, we'll do our best to find him. Thus began two sisters' search for the green-haired teen they encounter. Unknown residents. So, I've heard that OCD potentially found someone to perform multi-adoptions. A 14-year-old boy by the name of Midoriya Izuku. 14. Someone my age. Father. I was surprised, myself. But considering how desperate the agency is to find people to adopt these children, perhaps it's not that surprising. How on earth has such a thing happened? From what I gather, it was through a string of coincidences. The boy ended up rescuing each of these children from villains. And in response, they imprinted themselves on him. Wait, someone my age had the courage to face villains and rescue those children from them. Haha, I'm impressed. Don't even think about putting yourself in danger to emulate such feats. Yes, mother. Regardless, it is indeed impressive for such a young boy to perform such feats. But if he'll continue to run into more OPCs, or even be given some for adoption, then he'll likely need assistance. And so an interested family kept an eye on the young caretaker. 40 soon, in the near future, Izuku will find himself being sought out by more OPCs, and soon, he will encounter those who would help in the raising of his kids, as well as his goal in becoming a hero.